Hello, Right Here audio listeners. Today, I have a very special recording of a full-length audiobook. This is an autobiography by the great Tomi Waziri. If you haven't heard of him, he is a gentleman in Lagos, Nigeria, who has an amazing, highly valuable story to tell. Tomi is the person who requested an accessible version of Roots by Alex Haley to be made available to people like himself. People who have a reading impairment who face access barriers to academic learning material. We are honored and humbled to collaborate with Tomi and share his story, and we believe his story is one that should be amplified to everyone. And at the time of uploading this recording, April 24th, 2023, it's Tomi's birthday. Join us in wishing Tomi the happiest of birthdays by taking the time to thoughtfully hear his story out. Please check out the links in the description to his YouTube channel and also his Instagram page. We would highly appreciate it if you sent some love his way and told him we sent you. And if you are a writer or have writing you would like to be made accessible to people by providing human narrated recordings, let us know and we would be equally honored to collaborate with you as well. Our mission at Right Here Audio is to increase accessibility, break down barriers, and provide our allyship to persons with reading impairments so they can empower themselves to access academic material and lift themselves up through the power of education. Without further ado, let's go on a journey through Tomi's first-hand account of his story. Happy listening. From tragedy to triumph, a young man's journey from being blinded in a robbery attack to becoming a global icon of hope for millions of people. By Tomi Waziri. Foreword by Dr. Opi Banwo. Why I wrote this book. People may be wondering why I decided to tell the story about the darkest moments of my life to the whole world. Is it to make people feel sorry for me? Is it for money? Or just a pastime to take my mind off the pain and discouragement that often comes from losing your eyes at the prime of your life? First and foremost, I assure you I did not write this book to make you, the reader, sorry for me. I did not write this book to relieve the pain of pain or loneliness in my life. I also did not write this book for the money. God has already blessed me with a little to make my life comfortable despite my challenges. The purpose for writing this book is to reignite hope in the lives of people. I decided to brace up and make this book happen to make people see challenges differently, to inspire and reignite hope, love, and kindness in the world. It's also to make people understand that challenges are not all bad and sometimes to help others overcome their challenges. It's to encourage the discouraged with my courageous mindset, to help people understand that the power to make choices is in their hands. With this book, I am on a mission to making 1 billion people and more smile through my story, and to make everyone that reads this book realize that sometimes our best potential is birthed from the worst and most perilous experiences. Foreword by Dr. Opi Banwo. It's not every time we come across ordinary people who have handled extraordinary tragedies with extraordinary grace. One day on a new app called Clubhouse, I was blessed to come across one such individual. His name is Tomi Waziri, who is now the author of this book you hold in your hand. Tomi showed up in a room discussing the dire political and security situation in Nigeria at the time. He was given only a few minutes to make his own contribution to the matter at hand. In a few minutes, he recounted how he lost his eyes following an armed robbery attack due to a messed-up medical health system in the country. After he finished, we were all stunned into silence. You could hear a pin drop in the room of over 200 people. Spontaneously, everyone embraced him and blessed and celebrated his courage, because before he started talking, none of us in the room had any idea that he was blind. After falling in love with him in that clubhouse room, I decided to follow up with him and help him make the best of the lemon that Nigeria and the world had served to him. I told him his story of tragedy to triumph and the lessons he learned in the process is a story that must be memorialized in a book to be a blessing to the world. Tomi readily accepted the challenge to become an author and threw himself into the book writing and publishing process with a scary determination. Despite his lack of sight, Tomi showed amazing vision in how grasping his story of turning his tragedy into triumph could be his launch pad to bring hope to others around the world who may be dealing with one tragedy or the other. The result of that book writing effort is what you now hold in your hands. Tomi has shown that tragedies like losing your eyesight is just an event. It is how you respond to that unfortunate event that determines whether you are an overcomer or just another person people look at with pity. I believe this book will indeed bring hope to millions and put smiles on the faces of 1 billion people all over the world. This book is indeed a story of tragedy, but it is also much more than that. It is a chronicle of a young man's indomitable spirit and his refusal to give in to depression, despair, or hopelessness in the face of disaster. Above all, it is a book that gives you real-life lessons on how you too can survive and triumph over the dark valleys of life. Chapter 2. Walking into the Tragedy. September 12th was the day it happened. But before then, I started working for Uber in January 2019. The plan was to save money and set up my own business. I had big plans to run a repair shop where I'll fix gadgets. I just love to fix things. That was what I loved doing, fix gadgets like mobile devices, Android, laptops, and what have you. And I wanted to be an employer as well, and I planned to become a philanthropist, self-reliant, independent, to be a man of value, resilient and persistent, patient and kind. One fateful day, September 12th, 2019, like every other day, I was striving to meet up with remittance for the car that I was driving. I was just so desperate at that point to meet up with the weekly remittance. I was to remit 30,000 naira every week to the owner of the car, and life happened. Losing my sight and how it happened. That day around some minutes to 8 p.m., I was at 1004 Estate, Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria. And I parked my car hoping for the next trip to take me towards my home address, which was Oshodi, Lagos. That day, something just kept on telling me, just go home. But because I needed to meet up with the weekly remittance that was due, I had to just wait for a trip. I got a trip around 8 p.m., and the trip entered my phone. My rider, who I'm very close to, even until today, told me she was going towards Papa Ajuo, and it was towards the direction of my home address. I was like, wow, this is a good trip. It was a long trip, which will fetch me money, and also take me towards the direction of my house. Papa Ajuo was like a stone's throw to Mafoluko, Oshodo, Lagos. So yes, it seemed to be like a promising trip every Uber or Bolt driver in Lagos would aspire to get. I picked up that rider and we embarked on this journey. We struck a conversation almost immediately the trip started. She asked me, "How was your day?" I said, "It was fine." I think she noticed that I was a special person. I don't know. I asked her if I should use the Google map because I want to keep my values and I don't want it to be like I'm cheating my rider. Sometimes the rider feels that if you don't follow the map, they're taking you through a longer route that will fetch more money for the driver. I always do ask my riders, and I did. When she said yes, I asked her if she has a better route, and she said that I should use the map. The map took us through a Pongbo bridge in Lagos. We got into a traffic, and that was now around 10 minutes after 8. We were stuck in traffic on a Pongbo bridge, but my mind just was not settled. I said to my rider, "Are you a Christian?" And she said yes. And I said, "Just pray." I don't know. I just said that, and that was all I said. I didn't know what was coming, but my spirit just told her to pray. It got to a point where we moved ahead, and I saw these 2 young men. They must be in their 19s and 18s, very young guys. I saw them passing my car, and they looked so suspicious. One of them was peeping into the car, and for every Uber driver, we usually mount our phones. So I'm sure that one of them saw my phone inside the car, but I didn't know for sure then why the guy was peeping into the car, but I just knew that something was happening. Before I knew it, I looked to my side mirror and I noticed that these guys, when they passed my car, they passed to the back of my car and they both halted, and one of them was putting his hand in his pocket and he was coming back. This was my first experience. I've never been robbed before. It has never even happened in my house, but I knew that something was about to happen. The next thing I knew was that both of them came back. The other one was beside my rider. My rider was directly behind me. The other one approached her, and the one with a gun. That was what I saw next. He put his hand in his pocket, and when he came to the side of my door, the next thing I saw was a gun. But luckily for us, the glass was up. And then we started hearing, "Give me your phone." That was all I was hearing. Before he came back, I already hid my phone just beside me at the gear, and I put off the screen so he wouldn't see it. The next thing I told my rider was, "Keep your stuff. I think these guys are about to rob us." I even told her that one of them had a gun, and I just knew that she was panicking. That was all I could remember at that point, and she was like, "Oh my God." I was in shock. I've never seen a gun that close to me before. I never knew if it was a standard gun, but I was scared. I was confused at that point, and I just couldn't respond immediately. All I knew was that I told the rider that she should just calm down. I cared about my rider first, apart from the fact that that was the values and the ethics of being a driver. My rider was what came to my mind first, and I said, "Just keep your stuff and just calm down. Stay low." I knew that these guys wanted my phone, so I reached out to my phone at my right side, not knowing that this guy had already pointed the gun or cocked the gun. I looked towards this young man, and the next thing I heard was a gunshot. I became unconscious for a while. Moments later, the glass was shattered, and this young man, very young, I think he will not be more than 18 or 19 years. I regained consciousness after some seconds when the rider was trying to revive me and just shake me to come back. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I couldn't see. No lights, no car lights, nothing. I just couldn't see. The next thing I felt was blood coming out of my eyes, nose, and mouth. I felt my 2 front teeth were broken. Luckily for me, it was a local gun, locally improvised bullet. They call it pellets, so it spread and hit me on both my eyes. The pellets pierced both my eyes. It hit me on my nose. I have pellets even underneath my skin on my nose. There is a pellet on my jaw. I have pellets inside my head, slightly underneath my brain. I have pellets close to my spine, under my brain. When it happened, I was in so much pain. The next thing I did was ask my rider if she was okay, but before then, I realized that this young man tried to see if he could find my phone. And the next thing I heard was, "Yee," like he was surprised about what he had done. It was like he came to the realization that he had done something terrible, and so he took off. The one at the back couldn't break the door because that one was up. I guess maybe they had just one bullet or something, so he couldn't reach out to the back. The rider was safe, and I was happy, and I asked her, "Hope you are fine." She said, "Oh my God, they just shot you, and you're asking me if I'm fine." She was wailing. She saw the blood, and she screamed, "Oh my God." She was just screaming. I don't know if she heard me, but I realized I was just whispering, "Get help." I couldn't speak out because I couldn't fathom what was going on, but I was in so much pain. I was bleeding profusely. I was drenched in my own blood. There was blood everywhere on the steering and on the gear. She ran out of the car calling for help. She wound down initially calling out for help in that same traffic. Cars around us could detect what was going on, but nobody answered. Nobody came down from their cars to our aid even after these young men took off. I think maybe that was just God. My rider wasn't hurt, and I was just so happy. He took off with his accomplice, and we were left alone there. Cars were passing by us. I could hear cars passing by us honking, and nobody stopped. She screamed, cried out, nobody stopped. So she ran out of the car. She ran down the bridge. Luckily, she got into another car, reached out to some policemen that were ahead, and I was left alone all by myself, bleeding. I crawled out of the car, opened the door, and all I could hear was glasses. Everywhere, glasses that had pierced my body. The ones on the chair everywhere. I crawled out of the car, sat beside the car on the culvert. I started waving to people, calling out for help. Nobody answered. I screamed for help. I was confused. Why can't I see? My mind kept on telling me that I had gone blind. This thing damaged your eyes. My mind kept on telling me that I had gone blind. This thing damaged your eyes. I just couldn't see anything. I've been blind since that day. I couldn't see anything, but I kept on waving. Nobody came to my rescue. I laid down on the culvert and started to pray. I said, God, if this is how I'm going to die, have mercy on me. It was more like a Hollywood movie when you just feel like you're going to die. I was living that moment and I felt like I was going to die. I prayed that God should just take care of my family, take care of my loved ones, and let them know that I love them. And then I just laid down there and I said to myself, okay, let me just hope for heaven. Since nobody answered, I decided to save my energy and just lie down there. Maybe somebody will come. I just knew that I was getting weaker and weaker because I was losing a lot of blood. I was left there for about 20 to 25 minutes before I heard the voice of two men, all there by myself, not making any sound, didn't scream for help again since nobody answered, and the voice of two men sounded like angels. I was happy at that moment to hear the voices of two men. It turned out that they were two policemen that my rider had alerted. They said, "Oh my God," they started speaking in English and pidgin English. "See what they did to this guy. Oh my God." They were shocked about what had happened to me. One of them even said, "I guess they were traffic robbers." I could hear them, but I was hearing them faintly because I think I was already passing out at that point. The next thing I knew was that one of them grabbed me, lifted me, supported me up, put me at the back seat directly behind the driver's seat, sat beside me, and the other one took the steering wheel and we embarked on the journey again. I was bleeding in the car and the man beside me asked me, "What's your name?" I told him my name is Tomi, and he said, "Just stay awake." It's like he noticed that I was already passing out. We were stuck in traffic for another 2 hours or thereabout, and I was still bleeding profusely. I was passing out, and this man just kept on waking me up. I was in so much pain, and I felt life leaving my body literally, but this man kept on pushing me. He would say to me, "Don't sleep off, stay awake." He kept on saying it. Eventually, we got to the hospital, but at this time, I couldn't respond anymore, and I could hear this man trying to revive me. They brought me down. I couldn't respond. I've never felt that way before. It was more like my consciousness was leaving me, but I could hear them. I think I got to the hospital right on time. Before we got to the hospital, one of the policemen got my mother's number, and I said, "No, don't call my mother. She's the only one at home. I don't want her to hear what happened to me. She might just faint or something, or pass out, or get a heart attack." And they said, "No, we have to call your mother." So they called her. She arrived at the hospital while we were in the car before we got inside. When we got there, I couldn't respond, but I realized that it was policemen that had brought me to the hospital. If it were not for the policemen, I don't think I'd be alive today. They didn't ask for any police report, and they injected me. I felt an injection in my hand, and I began to get stronger. I don't know what the injection was, but I could now respond. When I started responding, the next thing I heard was my mother's voice. I've never heard my mother cry that way before. I just can't explain. She shouted, she screamed, she fell to the ground, and I was scared that she was going to die or have a heart attack or something. But just so that I give her hope, I raised my hand and told her that I'll be fine. Even in so much pain, I just tried to let her know that I'll be fine. They tried to keep her away from me, and treatment started. They cleaned me up, removed my clothes that was drenched in blood. I was all soaked up in blood. When the doctor saw the car and saw all the blood, he asked, "How come this young man is still alive in all this blood?" The doctor said that I needed blood, and my mother said, No, my son is going to be fine." I think that was faith. She didn't want them to give me blood. And the doctor checked my PCV, and surprisingly it was 40%, and he was surprised and said, "Madame, just continue to serve this God that you're serving," he said sarcastically. To cut the long story short, I was cleaned up. They did an x-ray, realized there were pellets in my head, under my nose, in my gum. There were pellets that broke my 2 front teeth, and they saw the x-ray. Both of my sisters came. My brother was not around then. He was away for youth service. They told him the shocking story, and he came the next day. The hospital where I was treated was Military Hospital at Yaba, and they did so well. They treated me so well. They referred us to Lasuth, Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, but before they referred us the next day, they treated me so well. I was cleaned up, and I just told my loved ones that I just want to rest, and they kept on saying, "Tomi, please don't die," and I said, "I'll be fine." I just kept on assuring them. I didn't want to make them sad. I didn't want to be the reason why they'll be in tears. So I kept assuring them that I'll be fine, even though I wasn't sure that I was going to be fine. I slept off, stretching my hands to them, holding their hands. All I could remember was that I woke up the next morning and they were already moving me to Lasuth. They helped me to the car. We started a journey. It's almost all my family members around at that point. My sister's husbands, my mother, my siblings. My brother had not come then. They wheeled me, and we got into the car and drove to Lasuth. At Lasuth, the doctors came to check me, and they checked my eyes. I remember one of them saying, "We are going to take care of one of the eyes. It's like one of them is not really damaged." They said they could still save one eye, and that was how I got the shocking news of my life. Several doctors came to check, even student doctors came to check. They kept on coming and I wasn't getting any positive response. The way they were sounding, I knew that something was wrong. I just grabbed one of them and I said, "Tell me, what's going on?" He wasn't bold enough to tell my loved ones, but he had to tell me. He said, "Tomi, I'm afraid the chances of you seeing are slim. I'm afraid you might not be able to see again." And that was how I walked into my tragedy. Lessons. One lesson I've learned from this chapter, and I think that people can take away, is trust your instinct. As a Christian, we call it trusting the Holy Spirit. I believe that it's the Holy Spirit that will put that instinct in you. When something keeps telling you don't do it, then don't. Something kept on telling me, don't take that trip. I was waiting for a long trip, which would give me good money. I got it and I ignored that thought not to take that trip. There are points in our life where something says, don't go out today. You just know that there's something telling you not to go out, or don't do that thing. Don't go on with that business deal. Wait a little, pause. It's that instinct. Learn to trust your instinct. If I had trusted my instinct, yes, maybe I won't be blind today. But amazingly, God made a purpose out of it. Nobody wants to lose their sight, but I'm happy that there's a purpose for it. Secondly, apart from the fact that you should trust your instincts, when it comes to finances, when it comes to money, don't rush. I was so quick to make money. Don't run faster than your shadow. When you try to run faster than your shadow, you're trying to cause problem for yourself because you can't defy the law of life itself. Nobody can ever run faster than their shadow. Take life a step at a time. Don't be too forward. Be patient. Don't run too fast. Take every process. Don't jump steps. Take every single step. Thirdly, create good relationships. One thing I learned from this is my rider, even though we had a conversation for less than an hour, we started talking like we knew each other before that day. I asked her how her day went. I asked her how she was doing, and that's me giving a good service. What type of service are you rendering to create good relationships with your client wherever you find yourself? Are you focused on the money that you're about to collect, or how your client feels, or to make your client smile? That is what I've always done. I never knew that because of the little relationship I built when I was shot at the face, and I asked my client if she's fine, and she was surprised. She said, "Tomi, they just shot you and you're asking me if I'm okay." Build a strong relationship with your clients. This is very, very important. Wherever we find ourselves, be it business, our relationships, our families, our loved ones, or even in church, what type of relationship are you building? One thing I've learned again in this experience is for people to be more caring. I was left alone that day, bleeding. Nobody came to my aid. Let's be as human as we can be to every other human being. I was left alone in my tragedy. Nobody dared come down from their cars. Cars just kept on passing by my car. Let's learn to love. Maybe all I needed at that point was just somebody to hold my hands. Chapter 3: Denying the Tragedy. Shocking news. I was in so much pain the day after I lost my sight. When I was moved to the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, everybody was anxiously waiting for the news. They were confused, wondering whether I was going to see again or not. My family members didn't know what the doctors were going to say. While we were in the car on the way to the hospital, they kept on asking me if I could see. I told them that the only thing I could see was black, but I kept on reassuring them that I'll be fine. I kept on telling my mother that I'll be fine. I just wanted them to be in a positive state of mind, even though deep inside me I was troubled, not knowing whether I will be able to see again, whether the doctors will be able to do something about it, or whether I was going to become a blind person. In my mind, I just felt like the doctors will do something about it, and this was my reaction. I just couldn't fathom what was going on at that point in time. I was just confused, wondering whether I was going to see again or not, thinking about how reliable the medical system here in Nigeria is, and coming from a family that didn't really have much, and I don't even have much myself. I remember when one of the doctors came to tell me, not expecting how I would respond. He said, "Tomi, I'm afraid you will not be able to see again. Your optic nerves are damaged." The pellets underneath my brain pierced my eyes. The pellets are lodged under my brain. They damaged my optic nerves, and I have pellets very close to my spinal cord. I guess God just saved me from being paralyzed from the neck downwards. I have pellets on my nose still as I narrate this story. My 2 front teeth are broken as the pellets had shattered them. I still had bandage on my eyes at this point, and my wound was cleaned up. When the doctors said that to me, my next reaction was, "Why am I still alive?" Immediately, the doctor encouraged and kept on encouraging me. "No, don't say that. You're not the only one that is going to go blind," he said to me. When he said that, I couldn't fathom the emotion I was feeling at that point. All I knew was that when he said that after, I had asked, "What's the use of me being alive?" I kept mute. I stopped responding to my loved ones, and I told them to just give me some time. I think I needed to digest that news, especially when you were sighted for 27 years of your life, and now the doctors tell you that you cannot see again. I love the power of my sight. Anytime I'm in a low state, anytime I'm down, I love to drive to the beach and watch the sunset, but I can't do that anymore. This is how I started reacting, thinking about the things that I can't do anymore, seeing my loved ones, realizing I can no longer see my loved ones. All the things I wanted to achieve, I started asking myself, how do I do this as a blind person? It was really hard, I must say. It hurt me so bad that I cried out until I could cry no more. I cried and cried and cried to the extent that tears didn't come out anymore. I just couldn't accept it. My brain couldn't accept it. I wasn't ready to accept something like that, such bad news, but that was my reality. It was my pain. It was my dark time. It was the time when I slid into depression. I had dived deep into depression, and that was where my depression started. That was where the pain started. It was so hard, I must say. Nobody wants to be in that position where somebody takes away your sight and you keep remembering that the last person that you saw was the person that took away your sight. A young man not more than 18 years old, because I can remember his face. The last man I saw before I got blind, and I've never been so bitter in my life before. I started to ask God, why would this happen to me? I am doing a legitimate business. I am not into fraud. I am not into Yahoo. This was how I kept on reacting. Why would this happen to me? I just kept crying. In fact, I didn't stop crying for a long time. The fact that men in Africa have been told that they are not supposed to show emotions, they're supposed to show strength and courage. I think that we should show emotions. I cried out, and I just cried and cried. I couldn't control myself, and everybody just kept on encouraging me, the doctors, the nurses, my loved ones, but I didn't respond to anybody. It's not something you just want to hear out of the blue, somebody telling you that you will not be able to see again. At that point, I was realizing that I couldn't see anymore. Everywhere was dark. I opened my eyes wide. I tried to see if I could open it wider and see maybe if there will be a glimpse of light, but to no avail. It was hard. It was so painful. I can't even qualify the pain. If there's any scale, I think it's going to exceed that scale. How do I take care of my mother? I asked myself. How do I bring my mother out of where she is in the family house and build a house for her, get the best for her? How do I do this as a firstborn son? How do I take care of my home? How do I become a father in the future? How do I communicate, chat, and talk with my loved ones? How do I communicate with people? This was my reaction. This was my pain. The reality of my new identity as a blind person was hard to accept. Very hard, I must say. It's not easy for you to get that kind of news and not cry inside. Apart from the physical pain that I was feeling so much pain inside my head. Pain on my eyes, pain on my face, in my nose where pellets had pierced. I still have pellets in my gum as I narrate this story. Feeling that pain was not just the physical pain and the emotional pain, it was more than painful. This was how I reacted to the whole incident. I don't wish something like this to happen to even my worst enemy. At that point, I was like, is it not better I die than live the rest of my life as a blind person? I couldn't even pray at that point. As a Christian that I am, I couldn't pray. I just couldn't find myself. I was so lost in the emotions. Lessons. First of all, nobody wants to walk into a tragedy. Nobody wants to be told that he will not be able to see again after 27 years of his life. My depression was justified. My pain was justified. My sorrow was justified by that news. Nobody wants to hear that their legs are going to be amputated. Nobody wants to hear that their hands are going to be amputated. It's not the news anybody wants to hear. Nobody prays for accident. Nobody prays for life challenges to come to them. I have learnt to see challenges differently from this particular story. I have learnt to be calm in all situations. Do your best to be calm. When I heard other people's stories of when the doctors told them that they had lost their sight to glaucoma, how they reacted, how they started shouting, destroying things, that will not help matters. That will cause you even more pain. When I was at the Federal Nigeria Society for the Blind, FNSB, one thing I noticed was that the difference between them and me was the fact that I was calm. I don't know what it is that you are going through. I don't know what it is that the doctors have told you. But because I was calm, my healing was rapid. The doctors were surprised, even though I was in pain, both physical and emotional, but I learnt to be calm. My mind was pushing me to start making a scene. Why would this happen to me? And kept wailing and crying and cursing God, or say what I don't want to say and start destroying things, and before you know it, you become mentally deranged. While at the Federal Nigeria Society for the Blind, some of the people I met there told me stories of how people act like they were deranged already, mentally disabled, mentally unstable, but instinctively I was calm. I respect other people's differences. I respect how they are wired. We are not wired the same. But take this lesson home. Be calm in all situations. Is it bad news? Be calm. That's why nobody wants to hear bad news when they are driving. It might cause the person an accident. Learn to be calm even when you hear bad news. Take in deep breaths. I tried my best to be calm, and because I was calm, it helped my process of healing. It helped me process myself. It helped me on the journey of overcoming depression and suicide in just a matter of 7 days. Now, this didn't stop me from crying and showing emotions. One thing I've learned again is to show emotions. Men have been told here in Africa not to show their emotions. We have been told not to cry, that it will be a sign of weakness. But we are all emotional beings. People die in silence because they don't show their emotions. You see some soldiers taking guns to shoot themselves in the head. Why? Because they've been told not to show weakness, so they hold in the pain, and it becomes like stagnant waters in their head. Why not let the river flow and show your emotions? Be as human as you can be. If you want to cry, cry. If you want to wail, wail. Even though I was calm, I cried. I showed my emotions. Studies have shown that 70% of ladies are prone to suicide and show signs of depression. On the other hand, only 30% of men are prone to suicide. Even though the number for ladies is higher, studies have shown that men commit suicide more. Why? Because they don't cry out. They hold these emotions inside. But what did I do? I cried out. Don't fight that fight alone. Cry out like I did. Don't be in that pain alone. Cry out. See an expert, see a counselor, see a psychotherapist. That you are seeing a counselor doesn't mean you are running mad. Cry out, reach out to someone. Don't die in silence. Chapter 4. Betrayed by the Nigerian Health System. Hospital Experience. Now I'll be looking at the health system. When I was going through my pain, struggles, and the confusion of just receiving the news that I've become a blind person, I was taken to the ear, nose, and throat ENT department, and they checked my nose. I would say that the ENT did a wonderful job. It was a very painful experience. They put stents in my nostrils just to make sure they were aligned. Before they did that, they had to wait for the swelling on my face to go down because my face was swollen all this time, even when the doctors came to tell me that I wouldn't be able to see again. I mean, my face was terrible, all swollen, and I could literally feel the swelling sometimes. I remember the ENT waited as well for the swelling to go down before they carried out the procedure to ensure my nostrils were aligned properly. They did something called toileting. They cleaned out all the dried blood in my nasal cavity, deep down my nostrils, and they cleaned it out. But for the eyes, when the doctors saw the extent of the damage to my eyes, they told me that I won't be able to see again. Now, after that day, they only sent prescribed eye drops for me to prevent infection, and they were supposed to come and see me as often as they could, but it turned out that they didn't. When I was on the sickbed, I was left with my mother. It was just a few nurses who were doing a wonderful job. Due to the fact that there were not enough staff, my mother was the one putting eye drops in my eyes, when it was the nurses that were supposed to do it. I remember several times when there was no water in the hospital. Mosquitoes were feasting on us almost every night. It was a very terrible experience for my mother, who was just there for me. She had to go fetch water sometimes outside. I remember also meeting a couple of older men in the ward who experienced the same thing. Their wives in their 50s and 60s would go outside to fetch water. Mosquitoes dealt with us. The experience at the hospital was a bad one. It was really terrible. One of the doctors had assured me that they will save one eye. I can remember vividly, like it was yesterday. They would give me an appointment for 1 week. I'll wait for a week, and I will not see them. This lasted for about a month before a doctor came to see me. They kept on saying that my face was still swollen, but I felt like they should at least be coming to check on me and not just leave the nurses to handle such a serious case as mine. They continued this way for about 2 months, and by the time the swelling on my face had gone down, they said that my eyes were infected, that I will have to remove the eyes. At that point I asked myself, how will I even have the belief or the faith that some way, somehow, God will restore my sight when there are no eyeballs in the sockets anymore? All of this lasted for months. The only department I know that really took good care of me, that kept on coming to check on me, was the ENT department. They kept sending nurses to treat me, but I never saw the doctor who promised that he will save the right eye. Another thing they told me was that they will use local anesthetic to remove my eyes, and thinking about that, I was in so much fear. I was already pained, and now they are telling me that they will use local anesthetic to remove them, which means they will inject some part of my eyes and carry out the surgery to remove my eyeballs. I was in the process of going into the theater, but I just couldn't go through that kind of process. What if the local anesthetic wears out? I kept on asking myself, and I told my mother that I couldn't go through with that just then. At this point, my mother could no longer take it. We heard of a hospital called I Foundation. My mother's longtime friend, right from when we were staying with our father, was devastated when she heard about my condition. She couldn't accept the news. She came to the hospital and told us to go to I Foundation. That I Foundation will do something about it. Coincidentally, she happened to know someone in I Foundation, and she helped us. I think I Foundation did their best when, to cut the long story short, I ended up not doing the surgery in Lassuth. They would have removed my eyeballs, but by the time we got to I Foundation, the doctor checked me. He checked my eyes. I think he used a torchlight to check if I was perceiving any light. He kept on checking and asked, "Can you see anything?" This was after about 2.5 months that I spent in Lassuth. The doctor asked me if I could perceive any light, and I told him that I couldn't perceive any lights. The next thing I heard the doctor say was, "Oh my God, how I wish you came earlier. I Foundation treated me so well. Wonderful facility, I must say." I felt a little relief when I was in I Foundation, even though they told me that the damage has been done already. Yes, so this is I Foundation in Ikija. They did their best for me. I really don't know what happened, but I think the surgery was painful. We don't know till today who paid for the surgery, but I just know that my mother's friend knew somebody at I Foundation, and I think that was where help came from. They took me into the theater a day after I got to I Foundation, and they told me that they were going to treat me, and they were going to carry out surgery on my eyes to treat the eyes that is already infected and close up the wounds, the lacerated part of my eyeballs. That was where I got the doctor's report, at I Foundation. The surgery was successful, and they didn't remove my eyeballs. It turned out that they wanted to remove one of my eyeballs, but something just whispered to the doctor, my mom's friend, who was in the theater, watching them operate on me, said. The doctors kept on saying, "No, we are not going to remove his eyes." Although my eyeballs, as I speak, have shrunk, it's trauma to the eye. That's what they call it. Trauma to the eye would make the eyeballs shrink, so my eyes don't open completely. The operation was successful. It was full-body anesthetic. I was sedated. They gave me injections. The anesthetic man injected me and had a conversation with me. I slept off, and the surgery was carried out. I came out the next day, and yes, that was how life started. Another chapter of my life. What's next? That was the question that came to my mind. What next? Lessons. I remember when the doctors kept on coming to check on me. For the first day, when they saw me in the hospital, they all came, did their examination, prescribed eye drops for me and stuff. I thought that I was in a good place. I thought I was in a place where they will give me maximum support, maximum care. But I guess it just didn't turn out that way. Human beings are not perfect. It's probably as a result of what the government provided for the doctors and nurses in this government hospital, so maybe I shouldn't blame them. I remember one of the doctors came to tell me that they are going to save one eye. I will never forget. That gave me a glimpse of hope. I don't know who the doctor is, but one thing I've learned from this story is to try other options. The hospital I was in wasn't serving me right. There was no water. At some point, my mother had to go and fetch water in a hospital. I was feasted upon by mosquitoes several times. The nurses did their best, and I must say the ear, nose, and throat department, ENT, did their best too. But on the major problem, which was the eye, I was abandoned. Several times the doctors gave me appointments, but kept shifting the date. The nurses were left to treat me. This was a delicate issue. What I've learned here is, even though I don't have the money to go to a better hospital, I should have at least given it a try. So give it a try when you see that you are not being properly served. Try another option. I was told in the hospital where I was that they were going to remove my eyeballs. That was a devastating news again, causing me more pain. I spent over 2 months in that hospital, not until an intervention came, and I was moved to a private hospital where I was treated right, where I was comfortable. The doctors were more attentive, the nurses were more caring. I guess there are differences between private and public hospitals, but just for you not to say, had I known, try a place where you feel that they give you better services, hoping that help will come. Help came eventually and my eyes were not removed. I had my surgery. If only I had gone to that hospital earlier, where they didn't tell me that I will be given local anesthetic. They gave me a full-body anesthetic, just so I wouldn't feel the pain. Imagine if I was given local anesthetic with my eyeballs being removed. I would be in serious pain. So try a better option if you get one. Even if you don't have money, when it comes to matters of your health, give it a try. Help can come. Funds can be raised. People raise funds. Give a better option a try. These are the lessons I learned from being in a messed health system. This is a lesson I want everyone to take away. Avoid regrets later or saying, had I known. Even if you don't have the money, if you're not being served properly, go to somewhere better. Your health matters. Your health is very important. Life is precious. You can't create your own life, so don't take it for granted. Don't make my mistake. Chapter 5. Enveloped by the Tragedy. Here I will be talking about my pain and the struggle with my new identity. The awareness of my blindness, the awareness of all the things that I'm not able to do again. I love the beauty of paintings. When I was much younger, I used to sketch, I used to draw. Sometimes I'll just drive to a beautiful place just to watch nature. Realizing that I couldn't do that anymore in itself was painful. I remember when I was an Uber driver and I drove a client to Nike's art gallery. That gave me the opportunity to see the paintings, and seeing the paintings made me feel so good. It's like therapy for me. I love art. I love sculpture. I just love everything artistic. The creation of mankind itself, cars, buildings, inventions, and everything colorful, light, street lights, which I couldn't see anymore. Everything beautiful, the blue sky, the rain, the storm, all of this I couldn't see anymore. The thought of me not being able to see these things anymore just made me go deeper and deeper and deeper into that pool of depression. I was so depressed. Initially, I couldn't eat well. At a point, my mother knew how depressed I was. She cried quietly. She could literally see it. She didn't know that I was actually hearing her cry one day when we were still in Lassuth. She was crying. I could hear her. She just tried not to let me hear. I think she was trying to understand my pain, but the truth is, you can never understand somebody's pain until you are in their shoes. I couldn't even fathom my own pain. I think no human being should go through what I went through, but I did go through it. It was so painful. I really don't know how to express the pain. If I start to replay it, I'm sorry, this is bringing back emotions. I'm getting a little bit teary. I was so embittered. I kept on asking myself, why would this happen to me? Why? All my plans to be a successful businessman, a successful father, a philanthropist, and add my quota to the community, to feed people, to create projects where we can raise funds to reach out to people who are in need. I felt I couldn't achieve these anymore. It caused me even more pain. I just can't fathom it. Several times I'll be in the bathroom and just cry. I started to understand how it felt when I came down from the bed for the first time. I started to understand how it felt to walk around, to move around, to navigate as a blind person. That itself was painful. It was so painful. I looked at myself, and just that self-awareness was causing me more pain. The reality of what just happened to me after the doctors came to tell me that I will not be able to see again. I was asking myself how I'd be able to process all these. Every night, I kept on thinking of ways to take my own life. At a point, I whispered to the doctor. I've not even told my mother this, but maybe when she gets to read this book, she'll get to see this. At a point, when one of the doctors came, I whispered to him, and I said, "Is there a way you can kill me quietly?" None of my loved ones have heard this. That was how painful it was. Knowing for the fact that I'm still a young man. I mean, this happened when I was 27 years old, and I just couldn't take it. All what was on my mind was, let me just end my life. There's no use being alive. Who will marry me this way? How will I live my life now? Who will do the things I'm not able to do anymore? I love to drive. I wouldn't be able to drive anymore. The awareness of all the things that I can't do anymore kept on causing me more pain. I kept on being negative. I kept on choosing negativity. I kept on thinking of all the things that I cannot do, forgetting the things that I can actually do. But I won't blame myself. I think it's just normal. I just saw it as a normal thing then to go through what I was going through, express myself that way. My loved ones tried to encourage me, but nothing good was coming forth. All of this was my pain in a journey of 7 days. After 7 days, the story changed. After 7 days, it became a message, a new message. After 7 days, lights began to shine in. After 7 days of being depressed, being suicidal, everything started to change. This is my pain. This is my struggle. Lessons. I was going deeper into my pool of depression from the day I heard the news. I was in so much pain. I had my fears, like I said. How do I live my life? It was so painful. The devastating news you will not be able to see again, ringing in my head consistently. Apart from calming yourself down, how do you start to find ways to drag yourself out of that mud? How about trying to find ways to pull yourself out? Yes, I know it wasn't easy. It may not be easy for you, for whatever you're going through. For that news you just heard. Is it your child that has cancer, or you just got the news that you have cancer? You just got the news that you have fibroid? You just got the news that you have one ailment or the other? Or you just got the news that your business has collapsed? Or that all your funds have been taken away from you? Whatever it may be. Apart from the fact that you should be calm, start to find ways of coming out of it. There was the one thing I did. Apart from the fact that I was in so much pain, I was also thinking, and I think that's where it all starts from. That's where positivity starts from. Think of ways to come out of the situation, to find solutions, to not let yourself be overwhelmed by the pain, to not be enveloped by the pain. It will only make your vision blurry. In order not to make your vision blurry, don't let the pain overwhelm you. Don't let the news overwhelm you. Start to see options. What can I do to deal with this cancer? What can I do to solve this problem? Even in that pain, I kept on thinking, because if you are completely overwhelmed and you let the negativity overwhelm you, like glaucoma, your vision will be getting blurrier and blurrier. That's why you see some people fall into a state of depression that is hard to come out of. But because I kept on thinking of how I can come out of it as well, I found the way out, which I'll be talking about in the next chapter. Don't be overwhelmed by the pain. It has already happened. Don't let it consume you all the more. Think of the way out of the tragedy. It's like when you fall into quicksand. The more you let it envelope you, the deeper you sink into the sand. You fail to look at a log of wood that you can reach out to very close to you to pull yourself out of that tragedy. Don't let it blur your vision from seeing a potential help outside, from seeing that log of wood stretching out to you. All you need to do is grab that log of wood and pull yourself out of that quicksand. Don't just give in to the pain. Don't just be overwhelmed by the pain. Find options, even in the pain or struggle. Many people have died in the quicksand, not realizing that there is a strong grasp somewhere that they could have held on to, pending when help will come from another human being, because quicksand just keeps dragging you into that tragedy until it consumes you. Look at something around you. Look at that log of wood. Grab it. Hold on to it. Wait until help comes. This is a lesson you should take home. Chapter 6. The Light in the Tragedy. In this chapter, I'll be letting you in on how the little glimpse of light started to shine into my life through my family, my loved ones, and my longtime girlfriend, who is now my wife. When my family saw the way I was, and how depressed I was, the reality of, wow, my brother is blind, hit them. All my siblings, my 2 older sisters and my younger brother, who had come to see me from his youth service base, just watched me, and they couldn't leave me alone. They knew I needed them. Surprisingly, many of the people I called my friends abandoned me. They were not there for me. Just a few of them were there for me. I think it's true when they say a friend in need is a friend indeed. My family was my friend. The true friends who came consistently to check on me were my true friends. My longtime girlfriend, patient, loving, mercy of God as her name, stood by me, buying stuff for me like fruits consistently. She was there consistently to assist my mother in taking care of me. She helped my mother to fetch water sometimes when there was no water in the hospital. My sisters were actually busy at work, so they only came at weekends. All the time, my family was extremely supportive, even till now. My brother, very supportive and amazing young lad, always came to hold my hand. Every one of them was there for me. My mother, very caring, always held my hand. She slept on the floor beside my bed, and any slight move from the bed and she stands up immediately. If I make a move, she stands up and she would ask me what I wanted. They knew I was going through so much pain, and they knew I needed them. They were always there for me, always stood by me, did all the things I wanted them to do. When I needed to listen to music, I'd tell my brother to play me a song, and he would do it. This was actually one of the reasons why I overcame. I'll be discussing that in the next chapter. This was how light started to shine in my life, knowing that as long as there's life, there's hope. My family kept on reassuring me, saying, "Tomi, you are alive. That's something to be grateful for." I think hearing that started to make sense, but I still was embittered and pained by what happened to me. But the little glimpse of light came in through my family and the real friends that stood by me. Many people who got to hear about this story were devastated. They kept on asking, "Why would this happen to Tomi? Tomi is such a gentleman. He's not a troublemaker." My rider, the rider I carried that day, was also there for me, and she's still there for me till today. She came the next day to check on me after the trauma of what happened. She made it to the hospital the next day. She went to the police station to find out the hospital that I was taken to, and she located me at Lasu. She gave me some amount of money, such an amazing person. Till today, we are still very close. Family and friends were there for me in such an amazing way. I think family is just very important. Imagine if I didn't have family. I don't think I'll be where I am today. Even if I was able to overcome, it wouldn't be the way I did. Family was a big addition. My mother, on the other hand, kept on praying for me. She still prays till today that I will see again, and I join faith with her that I will see again. She reassured me of my faith as a Christian. She reminded me of all the reasons why I am still alive, which was hope. She gave me hope. She reminded me of all the good things that I planned to achieve, and she assured me that I can still achieve them. She was just there for me in such an amazing way. My girlfriend, on the other hand, was there to support my mother. Oh, such an angel. I'll be talking about her, our special story, in the next chapter. She's amazing, and I'll explain why. You would get to know why I say she's just so amazing. I think she's living after her name. Her name is Anuo Luapo, which means the mercy of God is so much. The mercy of God in my life through my wife. My longtime girlfriend is just so overwhelming. We've known each other for 10 years. I'll talk about that later in the story, but she was always there for me. She left everything she was doing and came every day to check on me, to make sure I was okay, to hold my hand. Surprisingly, my mother was meeting her for the first time, but I don't know why my mother just took a liking to her. My sisters and my brother kept on praying for me and reassuring me that I will see again, and kept on trying to inspire and give me hope. Something beautiful happened one night. After 7 days of being depressed and suicidal, I knelt down beside my bed, seeing all the things my family, friends, and my wife, who was my girlfriend then, did for me within those 7 days. With tears rolling down my eyes as I knelt, my mother was not there at that point. I think she was sleeping in the corridor, and these were the exact words I used in the prayer. I said, "God, I need you now. I cannot do this on my own. Don't let my blindness be in vain." I prayed this prayer with tears rolling down my cheeks. I asked God to give me strength. I asked God to inspire me. I asked Him to show me the way. I asked Him to be my light. I asked Him to be my guide. From that moment, the message from my tragedy began. Lessons. Family, loved ones, and friends are very important to us. The relationships we keep with our family are important. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. If you still have family, embrace your family. If you have friends, embrace your friends. One lesson I learned in this is, you never know a true friend until you are going through dark times. Determine your true friends when you are going through tough things, when you need help. And that's why I said, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Choose your friends wisely. Which ones are there to tell you the truth? Which ones are there to stand by you? Which ones are there to hold your hand? People I never called friends, people I didn't even know, I made friends with them. Why? Because they held my hand. They stood by me. They supported me. Choose your friends wisely. Watch your friends wisely. Secondly, be open to the support of your family. I don't know where I'd be without the support of my loved ones. Yes, it may be painful what you're going through, but give them a door to walk into your life. Help them to come in. I showed my family the way in because I let them to be there for me. I didn't say I didn't want to see anybody. I let my mother be there for me. I let my siblings be there for me. Family is very important. Don't take family for granted. Remember, you don't know what tomorrow brings. A family that loves you is precious, something you cannot buy in the market. Hold on to the ones that love you. Let them in. Let them be that light for you. Family will come in when you are going through perilous times. Family will puncture these holes in the walls for you and just let the light shine in. Now it's up to you to break out, break even, and to see the lights. Let their love, their care, and attention envelope you. Concentrate on that love. It will help you fight. It will help you overcome. My family helped me overcome. Let your family be there for you when you need them. Don't push them away. Give them a chance to help you. Yes, they may not know what you're going through. They may not be able to feel what you are feeling, but give them a chance to empathize with you. Give them a chance to sympathize with you. Give them a chance to be all loving, to be there for you. I gave my family a chance to be there for me. I gave them a chance to make me happy. I was open to them. I opened up my heart even though I was in so much pain. Open up your heart. Don't be so rigid. Don't say you're not supposed to show weakness. Show the weakness. Let your loved ones see it. It's what makes you human in the first place. That's what completes us, our emotions. We are all emotional beings. We all have a heart. Nobody has a stone as a heart, so help them to help you. Let them in. This is the lesson I've learned from this experience. I hope it's helpful to you. Chapter 7. The Message of Hope and Choice from the Tragedy. After the night I knelt down and prayed, something changed in me, something different, something unusual. Light started to shine into my life. It became brighter and brighter. It became more beautiful. I switched from the question, why would this happen to me, to, why not me? This was where hope and the ability to choose came in. I woke up a new person after that prayer. I woke up with a glimpse of strength, in inner courage. Surprisingly, I woke up smiling. Every fresh person that came to see me was asking, "Are you sure Tomi is blind?" I started to smile. I'll ask my brother to play a danceable song for me, and I would dance and sing along. Everybody was asking, "Is this not the man that just lost his sight?" I will sing along. I love music so much. Music was like therapy for me. I've always loved music. I think I got that from my father. He loved music so much, and I do sing. I started singing and the nurses were surprised. It got to a point that some of the nurses that came in while I sang along. I realized that I became a message of hope. I realized that they were inspired by this. People started to wonder, how come Tomi is this lively? I started to learn to do things myself. I started to learn how to use Google Voice to play music. I started all by myself. I started to learn how to make phone calls by myself just by using Google Voice. All I need to say is, "Hey Google, call Mom. Hey Google, call my sister, call Lara." Things that I was not doing before, I started to do it. People were wondering where the strength was coming from, and I think it's just something supernatural. I started to make everyone laugh. When people came to see me, I would ask, "What's going on? How are the streets of Lagos?" I would ask silly questions like, "Are there new streetlights on Mobolaji Bank, Anthony Way?" Funny, I must say. I would ask people questions like, "What's new on the road today? What has changed about Lagos? Show me what I'm not seeing." The new people that came after the first 7 days were left wondering because all they were coming to do was to empathize and try to inspire me. But it turned out that every single person that came were the ones being inspired. I was the one inspiring them, and they were showing it. It was from that moment I realized that there was hope. There was this glimpse of hope. Hope came from nowhere, and I can't even explain it. I think it was just God at work. I did things differently. I learnt a few things myself and did my best in every situation. For instance, when things fell from my hand, I would tell my mother, "Don't worry, I'm going to pick it up." And she'll say, "No, let me do it." I'll say, "I'll do it myself." I kept on saying, "I'll do it myself. Never mind, I'll do it myself." I just don't know where that strength came from. Hopelessness. I was hopeless before, but I turned hopelessness to hopeful by making a choice. I started to choose positivity. I started to choose to be happy despite my pain, despite my struggle. I started to choose to make my loved ones happy. My questions switched from why me to why not me. I started to tell myself, "Tomi, instead of asking yourself why you, ask yourself, why not you?" For a moment, I forgot all the pain that I was going through, and hope came from nowhere. I started to smile, I started to be merry, and my loved ones were surprised. At one point, my sister asked, "Are we sure that somebody else has not entered Tomi?" Simply because of the way I started to speak. I started to let everybody know I was fine. Instead of crying, I told everyone that came to see me that, "I'm fine, sit down." And we would chat and laugh. People that came to cry, I would tell them, "Don't cry. No, don't cry. I don't want you to cry. I want you to know that I'm fine." It takes a choice to switch on that light of hope, and that's why I call it the message of choice and hope. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to make that choice. I asked myself, "Tomi, would you want to be remembered as somebody who killed himself? Why not choose positivity? You did this in a matter of 7 days. When you choose positivity, you can become that message of hope to people out there. You can bounce back and become the encourager and no longer be the discouraged. You can be a message of the discouraged turning to an encourager to encourage the discouraged." I realized I could be that message of hope, and that if I chose positivity and respond positively, I could be that message and that light of hope. That was where it all started. I started to smile and began to act like I wasn't even blind. I forgot what happened to me. I listened to songs like "Happy" by Pharrell Williams. I would dance with my loved ones. I made a choice to be positive despite my pain, and I started to see challenges differently. I saw my challenge differently. I realized that I couldn't control the finger that pulled the trigger. But one thing I knew I could control was the choices I made, and I made the right choice. I had a scale in my head, and I asked myself, which one sounds right, negativity or positivity? Wouldn't you rather choose positivity? I kept on telling myself, instead of being remembered as somebody who committed suicide, why not be remembered as someone who became a message of hope? I have always listened to audiobooks. This time, I just listened to them randomly all by myself, with the assistance of Google. All I needed to do was ask Google to open or play motivational videos on YouTube by voice command, and it will do that for me. I just kept on doing it all by myself, remembering that all I needed to do was slide my finger to close applications. I would close the applications by myself. I was still doing a couple of things by myself with my mobile phone. Why? Because I made a choice. Like I always say, it wasn't easy. It's not about what happens to us, but how we respond to it. I told myself that it's not about what happened to me, but the question is, how do I respond to it? I think the confirmation of hope is when I give hope to somebody out there, I give hope to myself as well, because I remember that prayer that I prayed. Don't let my blindness be in vain. I had asked God not to let my blindness be in vain. I remember one of the men that was in the male ward, where I was being treated. One day, I reached out to him. He was having an attack or something. I think he had this tumor in his throat. I think it was cancer. I can't really recall, but the man looked disturbed. He was making some sounds. He couldn't breathe properly or something like that. What did I do? I stood up from my bed with syringe and drip still in my hand. I reached out to this man. I told my loved ones that I was going to pray for that man. Everybody was surprised. They said, "Tomi, you are not praying for yourself. You are looking at somebody else." I said, "Take me to that man. I want to pray for him." At that point, my sister asked, "Are you sure this is the Tomi that we know?" And she walked out of the ward and went to cry. I don't know what she saw, but I think she just saw the courage. Even in my pain, life shaped me. Life modified me. I saw humanity differently. I realized that people were going through pain, and I just wanted to pray for that man that his pain will end. I went back to my bed with the syringe and the drips still in my hand. I went back and sat down and continued my journey of making people happy. I knew I had to do something. The next mission was to accept my new identity of being a blind person. You will be reading about this in the next chapter. Lessons. As human beings, we are powerful in our own way. We are created to think, created to invent, created to be instinctive, created to be free, created to think critically, to do amazing things together. We are intelligent beings. The power of the human being is the power of choice. Everything starts from a choice. Every action starts from a choice. Choices. Here, I'm going to talk about choices, the lesson of choice. Every human being has been given the ability to make choices right from the time of Adam. My Bible tells me this. We either choose wrong or right, but it starts from your mind. What choices are you making in your mind when you are going through that challenge? Do you have a scale in your mind to weigh your options? To choose positivity or negativity? Which one sounds right to you? Isn't positivity the right choice? I didn't want to stay bitter. I didn't want to stay down. This was where the light started to shine in. Why? Because at that point, I realized that I could make a choice, and that choice would transform my life forever. That was where hope started as well. People can come to advise you. People can come to guide you. But the bottom line is, nobody will make a choice for you. Don't you love yourself enough to make the right choice, to choose positivity? Staying down won't solve any problem, but staying positive will put you on the right track to solving that problem. I chose to see the purpose behind the pain. I chose to see the light. After 7 days of being depressed and suicidal, I chose to be positive even in the pain. And that was when my transformation started, because I made a choice to be positive. The lesson from this is to choose. The choice is yours to make, and it starts from your mind. What are you feeding your mind with? This is very important. I started listening to audiobooks. Why? Because I knew I needed to make a choice. I made a choice to be positive. I started listening to audiobooks to build up myself, making conscious efforts to make a choice, to make that move, to get myself out of that tragedy. It's one thing for you to grab that wood that will pull you out of the tragedy. It's another thing for you to choose to make efforts to pull yourself out of the tragedy. My transformation started with a choice. The choice is yours to make. Also, I realized that when you are able to overcome, you can be a source of hope to somebody out there. This is where hope started for me. You can be a source of hope when you overcome your challenges and you share how you were able to overcome. You might just be a source of inspiration to somebody out there. It takes you sharing your story to change a life. It takes you sharing your story. you being vulnerable enough to share your story of hope, and I realized that I could be that channel of hope. It helped me to look positively at my situation, to think positively about it. Even though it was something I never prayed to happen to me or never prayed to happen to my enemy, I saw it as a message of hope. You can turn that tragedy to a message only if you choose to see it that way. I'm going to end this with a quote from a lady from America's Got Talent who has cancer. The doctors told her that she has 2% chances of survival. The doctors told her that she has just 6 months to live. Her name is Nightbird. Feel free to look her up. I quote, "Don't wait until life is no longer hard before you decide to be happy. The choice is yours to make. It's up to you to make the choice. The choice is waiting for you to make it. Make the right choice by choosing to be positive, even in a negative situation. By choosing to be happy, even when there's no reason to be happy. By choosing to stay strong, you have the power and the ability. It starts from your mind. Make the right choice. Don't wait until life is no longer hard before you make the right choice to be happy, to be a source of hope. Not just to everyone around you, but a source of hope to yourself." Chapter 8. The Message of Acceptance in the Tragedy. Sometimes we all go through terrible situations. I respect our differences as humans and how we are able to accept some challenges. We are all not wired the same way. But it is certain we will all go through challenges in life. I started to develop a positive mindset, and I started to realize that everything starts from the mind. It started from my mind. At a point when the doctors saw my positivity, how positive I was, they were shocked at the way I was healing rapidly. My scars were healing so fast. When you start to accept the challenges and have a positive mindset, it has a way of affecting your body. That's why some people that think so much come down with high blood pressure, some get stroke, you name it. You need to train your mind. Training your mind is like training your body. It's like a muscle that you train to build your immunity. Same thing goes for your mind. To see challenges differently, to be immune to the negativity of the incident, the challenge, or the pain. It starts from the mind. There's an important choice I made, the acceptance of my new identity. It was a journey, the journey of acceptance, healing, seeing myself, and being grateful for the fact that I'm alive. At this point, I started to tell myself that as long as there is life, there is hope. I started to reaffirm to myself that a living dog is better than a dead lion. This was my process of transforming from a caterpillar to a butterfly. I was in the cocoon incubating. Acceptance for me, I knew, was very key. Accepting the fact that I'm blind. Here in Nigeria, people really don't know how to refer to blind people. They feel if you call a blind person blind, he'll be offended. Well, I don't know about other people, but for me, I knew that it was important to accept this challenge, to accept it and turn it to a message of hope. I knew that it was very important. Yes, it wasn't easy accepting my new identity, yet still trusting God that somehow, some way, after praying several times, He will restore my sight. I told myself that as long as I'm going to be a blind person, even before He restores my sight, still holding on to faith, that I want to live the best life I could. I want to accept this life of a blind person. I want to accept this identity. I don't feel offended when people call me a blind person because if I don't accept it, it will be a big problem. I remember when I went to the School for the Blind, Federal Nigeria Society for the Blind, I met a very young lad. He calls himself Little Wonder, such an amazing young man. I learnt something from Little Wonder, although I had already accepted my new reality before I met him, but Little Wonder was like a confirmation to me. Little Wonder suffered stunted growth, so he's more like a dwarf, and now losing his sight at the same time. I remember talking to Little Wonder one day, and we had a wonderful conversation, which I'll never forget in my life. I asked him, "Have you accepted this?" We struck a conversation that led to that, and he said, "Yes, I have. I have accepted the fact that I'm short. I have accepted the fact that I'm partially blind. I've accepted my fate. So when people call me blind, short man, it doesn't hurt me anymore." He said these exact words, and it started to make sense. That for those of us who have disabilities, I knew that for you to be in the right state of mind, for you not to be offended or to be traumatized by the disability, you have to accept it. Accept and then bring something beautiful out of it. Very important. It wasn't easy, but it needed to be done. So I accepted my fate. I prayed to God to help me live this new life, to help me live a new life as a blind person. I prayed for him to teach me his ways. It got to a point where when I was in Federal Nigerian Society for the Blind because I accepted, I met a couple of people who have been blind for some 15 years, some over 20 years, and they were not productive. Why? Because they didn't accept their new identity. They were still drowning in the pain of going blind. I had a conversation with a man in the UK, a friend of mine I met after the incident, who reached out to me. He called me and he said he heard my story. He told me that he had a similar incident back then in Abuja. I think about 10 years ago. He was a student at the University of Abuja then, and robbers came to his lodge. They shot him in the face with the same type of gun and pellets, almost similar to mine, only that his own was at a close range and without the glass of the car. Very terrible experience. They shot him, he fell to the ground. He lost his sense of smell. He then asked me, "How are you able to do this in a matter of 7 days?" He said for 3 years of his life he kept on crying to God to take his life. I could understand that he was depressed. For 3 years of his life, still confused about his reality, 3 good years of his life, I was able to do it in a matter of 7 days. Why? Because I made a choice, the choice of acceptance. I accepted my fate. I accepted my new identity, which wasn't easy. It's not as easy as it sounds, but like I said, every human being has been given the ability to make choices, right from the time of Adam. I mean, as a Christian, Eve had the choice to take that apple or not to take it. Some of us have the choice to buy a new car or not to buy a new car. Some of us have the choice to marry or not to marry. Some of us have the choice to choose a business or do a 9 to 5. Same thing with acceptance. To accept was an action I needed to take, to accept the identity of a blind man and the consciousness of who I am. That was how I started the acceptance. We go through challenges sometimes. We go through struggles. We go through pain. We go through perilous times, but it all depends on how you see these challenges. There is more to life than what we see. Like I said, it's not about what happens to us, but how we see it. I had to pick myself up, accept the new reality, because I knew that was the only way I could move forward. In Nigeria, we say, "We move." I knew I just had to move on. Like I said in the last chapter, I knew I had to make a choice, which was a hard choice. I couldn't wrap my head around all that was going on initially, but I knew I had to make a choice. I didn't want to be remembered as somebody who eventually committed suicide, who would cause more pain to my loved ones. I realized that I could be remembered for something more beautiful. I could be remembered for a message of hope and light. But I knew that without accepting and embracing my new reality, I could go nowhere. Accept the challenges and turn them to a stepping stone. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. See these challenges differently. I picked up the lemons that life threw at me, but I didn't let them rot away. I turned them to lemonade. One more thing I knew I had to do was to forgive. I'll talk about this in the next chapter. Lessons. Acceptance is also a choice. A powerful choice, I must say. It can't be overemphasized. Acceptance is key when it comes to something we are going through. Some perilous times, some challenges. We fail to accept our failures. We fail to accept the challenge. We run away from it. Why would you run away from your challenges? It will keep haunting you. Why do you run away from your pain and not embrace it? It will keep haunting you. Don't run away from your failures. See how you can embrace it and make you a better person. Don't run away from your pain. Accept it instead. There just might be a purpose for the pain. Acceptance made me to embrace my new identity as a blind person. Now I don't feel offended when people call me blind. Why? Because I have accepted it. Accept the challenge. Make it a stepping stone to a better you, to a greater you. Step on it. Let it push you further. Don't run away from the pain. Don't run away from the failure. Accept it. Let it bring out your true potentials. Let it bring out the power that is lying dead in you. It is said that what doesn't kill us will make us stronger. Very true. If you can breathe, if you still have life, breathing oxygen, there is hope. Why not accept your new identity? Accept the challenge you are going through. If you came out of a broken relationship, accept it. If you came out of a divorce, accept it. If you failed at something, accept it, but don't stay down. Acceptance is key in every area of our lives, in all ramifications. Just like the lesson I shared earlier, the lady accepted her fate. She accepted what the doctors told her, but she didn't make it decide her choices on how she'll respond to it. She chose to be happy. Acceptance is very key. You lost a loved one, accept it. Crying cannot bring them back. I lost my sight, the power of my physical vision. I accepted it. When I accepted it, I got something else, something more powerful. My insight became brighter. Imagine if I didn't accept it. I would still be struggling and dragging myself in the mud. You don't want to drag yourself in the mud. If you don't accept, you will keep dragging yourself in the mud. Like what I said about my colleagues who lost their sight in many tragic ways. The only difference from me and them was I accepted. Don't stay too long before you accept when you know you can accept it now. Don't wait for time to go. Time waits for no man. You can't buy time back. Accept now. Now is the time, and push further. If you don't accept, it means you are dragging yourself in the mud, keeping yourself dirty. Dust yourself up. Let it make you stronger and keep pushing ahead. Keep striving. Accept the awareness of your personality, of your identity. Accept it so you can forge ahead. Remember, if you don't accept it, you waste precious time. Don't waste precious time so that you can make a better decision, so that you can see the light. Push, because as long as there's life, there is hope. Chapter 9. The Message of Love and Forgiveness. This was one of the most important parts of my journey, the journey of forgiveness. Not easy, I must say, quite hard. I can remember his face, remembering that the last person I saw was the young man not more than 18 years, who took away my sight. Quite hard, I must say, remembering that the last person I saw who traumatized me, who cost me so much pain, who made me cry out for help, who made me cry several times when I lost my sight, who put me into this tragedy, the last person I saw, the young man who pulled the trigger and a gun being pointed to my face. That was the last picture I saw before I lost my sight. I knew I needed to forgive, but I didn't know how. I knew that unforgiveness would cost me more pain. Unforgiveness will only open up the scars. Unforgiveness will make me not be productive. Unforgiveness will not make me think critically on the way forward, and unforgiveness will cause stagnancy. There was stagnant water piling up inside my head, and obviously nobody wants to drink from a stagnant pool of water. Water that is all messed up with spirogyra. Sometimes, we see the spirogyra in the gutter and how terrible and scary it can look. I think that was what I was clouding my mind with, but something needed to happen. The river needed to flow. Even though the river flowed several times when I was crying, That was just crying to let the emotions out. But this bitterness, this unforgiveness, was somewhere inside there like a pool. But I knew I had to forgive. Why? Because I told myself I could be that message of hope. I told myself if I respond positively, I could be that encourager to the discouraged, by encouraging the discouraged with my story of courage. I knew I had to do it, but the question was how? I repeat, the last person I saw was the young man who took away my sight. So I want you all to go on this journey with me and try to picture it. Picture how painful it can be. I didn't want to stay bitter. I wanted my healing to be complete. So I knew I had to forgive, which I eventually did. While still in the hospital, I was in between the lines and asking myself, should I forgive? Should I not forgive? I knew I had to. Now, what this young man cost me was painful. Everyone can agree with that. In fact, I remember when one pastor came to meet me and said, "Tomi, what do you wish for this young man?" He continued, "If you want me to curse him, I will." I don't know where that pastor is today. I don't know who he is, and I said, why would I curse him? From nowhere I just said that. What makes me different from him? And I added, I don't want to curse him, even though I knew I was still in pain. I don't know where that just came from. I think it was just my values, to love everyone even though I was still acutely aware that this young man took away my sight. I remember when I was watching some motivational videos on YouTube, I was searching for people who showed examples of love, even when they were beaten emotionally, while showing love, and yet people kept persecuting them. One of the examples I'm going to mention is Gandhi, the Indian freedom fighter, amazing man. I remember listening to how Gandhi responded with love when he was treated with racism. I remember it started when he was on a train, when India was under British colonial rule. He got into a train and obviously one of the conductors was racist. He saw this Indian man and pushed him away, and Gandhi was an educated person. I think that was where Gandhi's message of love started, to respond with love even when people hurt us. Isn't that beautiful? And that's why we remember Gandhi today as somebody who kept on responding with love, revenging with love, even when people threw hatred at him. When I speak, I always give this example. This is to the world, and to all the terrible things going on in the world. War here and there, countries imploding, war within a country, hatred for a fellow human being, unforgiveness, crises, tribalism, religious crises, hating for no reason. We are all human beings. We are breathing the same air. Although we are different colors, we have the same color of blood running through our veins. It's supposed to remind us that we are all beautiful, though we are different and unique in some respects, but we are all human beings, so why the hate? I always say this. When people throw stones at you, why throw stones back? Why be like them? Let's start to heal this world by throwing roses back. That's what Gandhi did when people hated him, when people did a lot of terrible things to him. He kept on responding with love, and I think that was what I did. Responding with roses and stones is not throwing roses and stones in the real sense, but if we all keep throwing stones, wouldn't we destroy this world? What message will we leave for the upcoming generation? We need to start to love and to forgive. The rivalry, the past mistakes shouldn't affect the generations to come. Imagine if we all keep throwing roses. Imagine how beautiful we'll make the world to be. The same value I got from this man called Gandhi. Again, something I thought about was my value as a Christian. Jesus Christ was crucified on the cross, but before then, the people were to make a choice between the thief and Jesus Christ. The same people he loved, the same people he healed, the same people he cherished were the same people that were pointing fingers and saying, "Crucify him." One thing that helped me with my journey of forgiveness was the thought of watching that movie, Passion of the Christ, and seeing it play out in that movie, making it look so real, trying to understand what Jesus Christ went through with the pictures of that movie, the visuals, and how Jesus Christ was on the cross with so much pain, nails in his hands, nails in his feet, a crown of thorns on his head, and when he was dying, he looked at the same people he loved. He had the choice of cursing them. He had the power to kill them. He had the power to revenge. But what did he do? He looked up and he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Isn't that beautiful? We need that type of love, not just to heal our community, but to heal ourselves. I don't know where you have been hurt. Why not revenge with love? Be on the right side. Be the one who breathes to fight for this world and not destroy it. Forgiveness. Finally, how did I forgive? I knew my values as a Christian. I knew the values of Gandhi and the message of Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross. One day after I was discharged from the hospital, I was hospitalized for 3 months. I needed to go to the beach because I love to connect with nature while I pray to God. Before the incident, I would just drive to the beach all by myself to watch the sunset and listen to amazing songs, meditate, and sometimes listen to the sounds of the ocean. I told my loved ones I wanted to go to the beach. They didn't understand. I told them I just wanted to go have fun. I'm sure they were wondering, how will he go and have fun when he just came back from the hospital? This is about a week or 2 after the incident. My loved ones were still surprised. I became the one inspiring them, and I told them I wanted to go to the beach. But I knew what I wanted that day. I knew I wanted to make the river flow. You see, I remember one day when I was trying to brush my teeth, and I realized what this guy has cost me. The value of sight. I realized that a task as simple as putting toothpaste on your brush is tedious. Give it a try blindfolding yourself and trying to put toothpaste on your brush, or blindfolding yourself and walking around the house and see if you can do it for 24 hours. I bet you wouldn't be able to do it. Only if you get to yes, you can. Why? Because I can. I've been blind for 2 years, so who cannot? We all can. We drove to the beach. I had earphones plugged in my ears, listening to a song. Forgive, an amazing, beautiful song. I can't remember now, but one thing I did was put my leg in the sand. I told one of my loved ones to lead me to the water, and I dug my feet in the sand, and the waves were hitting my feet. I could smell the ocean breeze. The same way I always prayed to God when I'm going through tough times, how I'll drive to the beach all by myself. Only now, I needed the help of people. And I dug my feet in the sand and looked up, and I had a beautiful imagination as a blind person of how the sun was setting. I stood there for 30 minutes, everyone playing around me, sounds of children and adults playing around me. But I knew what I wanted at that moment. I thought about this young man. I flashed back to this handsome young man who took away my sight, and I said, "God, help me. I can't do this myself. I don't want to stay bitter. I don't want to hold on to this, because I know it would affect me negatively." I knew I had to forgive, and I said, "God, help me. I need you now." And with that song, I can't remember the song now, but it was an amazing song that has to do with love and forgiveness. Music is therapeutic, and I was listening to that song. I stood in the water for about 30 minutes. I got to a point where I smiled. I've never cried that way before. I was smiling, and at the same time, I had tears running down my cheeks. At that very moment, I forgave this young man that shot me. Really beautiful moment. The stagnant water, the water with spirogyra, became a flowing, beautiful river. From there, it was complete. I transformed from a caterpillar. I was processed in the cocoon, and I flapped my wings like a beautiful butterfly, and I became free. Forgiveness is freedom. Wouldn't you rather set yourself free? Unforgiveness is like trying to poison somebody, yet you're the one taking the poison. It's like trying to imprison somebody, yet you're imprisoning yourself. Set yourself free by setting that person free. To make enemies isn't the goal, but to be loving, to love every human being. I do understand the differences of our experience, but wouldn't you rather make the right choice to forgive? Lessons. Love is a beautiful thing, not just for your wife or your partner, but love for every other human being. It is said that every single act of kindness makes the world a better place. First of all, I needed to forgive myself for all the pains I've caused myself. All the things I said I cannot do, condemning myself as a failure. Have you condemned yourself? Have you hurt yourself? Remember, you can't create yourself. You are special in your own way. You are beautiful in your own way. Love yourself by forgiving yourself first. Love yourself by asking yourself this question: would I want to be with me? Be there for yourself. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. To every other human around you, be an example of love and kindness. Be an ambassador of kindness and love. The world needs love today. There's a lot going on around the world. Ethnic crises, nepotism, racism. It starts from every single one of us. It starts from you reading this. Don't let them make you who they are. Those people who hate you, who cause you pain, who throw racial slurs at you. Be an example of love. Revenge with love. Let's make the world a beautiful place. Secondly, the message of forgiveness. Forgiveness is key. Wouldn't you rather let go so you don't imprison yourself? Unforgiveness is trying to imprison somebody, yet you are imprisoning yourself. It's trying to poison somebody, yet you are poisoning yourself. Do you want that for yourself? It starts with love. Loving yourself will help you fight these negative thoughts. It will help you with the challenges. Love yourself enough to know that you don't want to hurt yourself. I came to that awareness that staying bitter will do me no good. I knew that it wouldn't make me move forward. Staying bitter only caused me more pain. You might be doing well, but when you think about it and it pinches and hurts you, it means you're not free yet. If you hold someone, you hold yourself as well. Set yourself free by setting that person free. Forgive and let go. Leave it all to God or to karma or whatever you believe in. Revenge is not for you. Don't let them make you be like them by throwing stones in return. A time has come for us to respond by throwing roses at people who throw stones at us. Love is beautiful, isn't it? I know some of us who have been through so much pain, people have caused us so much pain, but don't be like them. Don't let what somebody has done to you change who you are. Don't let them make you a hateful person. I forgive, I love, and I'm still loving. I set myself free. I'm a free man today because I forgave the person who took away my sight. It's very hard, but I had to. It was a choice I had to make because I knew if I didn't forgive, it will keep haunting me. I had to let go. To whoever it may concern, let go and let God set you free. And be one of the most beautiful human beings in the world by adding to the beauty of this world and not taking away from it. Do not add to the hatred in this world. Be the one to add to the beauty of it. Make it more beautiful by being as human as you can be to everyone around you. Forgive, forgive, and I say again, forgive. Chapter 10. My inspiring love story, Love at First Sight. I remember when I was asking myself, how would I become a husband? Who would marry me this way? My longtime girlfriend from 10 to 11 years ago when we were teenagers? She's my first love. When we were in Oshodo, Lagos back then, 11 to 12 years ago, we were still young teenagers, and I think I am a living testimony to the fact that love at first sight truly exists. I saw this beautiful young lady. I'd never been in a relationship before. I didn't want to be in a relationship, but it happened, even though I was still a teenager. I found myself falling in love with this young girl. Obviously, because we were still very young, we didn't want our mothers to know. Coincidentally, she's also from a broken home, and it was her mother taking care of her from a very young age. I've always been a shy person and didn't know how to approach a lady. I met her through a friend, a neighbor. This neighbor usually organized a party on January 1st to celebrate the new year. That was how I met my wonderful wife. She's so beautiful. Even though I'm blind, sometimes I can just picture her face and how beautiful she is. I remember that she has this long face and this wonderful smile. Very pretty even till now. I just fell in love with her immediately. The amazing thing is that I knew my values and held on to them. I knew what I wanted for myself, so we didn't do anything nasty. I never touched her. We never made love or anything like that. Though love was just real. Sometimes because I wanted to see her, I would remind my mother that there was no fuel in the generator. I would want to be the one to go and buy fuel. All of a sudden, I just started buying fuel. Before I met Anu, my mother would send me on errands and I wouldn't want to go. But when I met Anu, I just wanted to leave the house all the time because ordinarily, my mother never liked to let us out of the house for fear of joining bad gangs. I would pick up the keg and my mother would say, "Be careful on the road, don't join bad gangs." She never knew that all I wanted to do was to see this amazing young girl who would eventually become my wife. She's just amazing, very gentle, very loving. We had conversations through phone, then it was MTN extra cool. We talked always. We all know that first love feeling. I remember that song, "First love is the deepest." I think it's true. Nothing can be compared to our first love. I remember when I asked her out. I had never tried it before, and she said yes, almost like she was waiting for it. I know she's going to attack me for this, but that's the truth. We loved ourselves so much even though we were young. But we knew what was bad, so we just loved each other. We didn't even talk about sex or anything like that. It was just plans for the future. How many children do you want to have? Those kinds of questions, and just call each other, and by the time I'll be ending the call, I would say, "I love you." While making these calls, I was hiding from my mother, which is normal. Love is beautiful, isn't it? This was how I met my wife, Anu Oluwapo. Then I used to call her Anu. Sometimes I call her Maria. I'm not surprised that her name is Anu Oluwapo because she's the reason why I realized that the mercy of God is just abundant in my life. God gave me this wonderful woman. God ordained the day that we met. I dreamt and I wished that she'll be my wife, but you see, it didn't happen that way. Initially, some things happened. She had to move from the neighborhood. I think her family was going through crisis. She didn't tell me, but she told me eventually that they couldn't pay rent and stuff. And this was how she left. I was devastated, and I was saying that I won't be able to see my love again. Then I would pick up the keg just to see her face. She'll come out at the balcony of her house, and I'll say to her, "Come out, I'm almost in front of your house." Right now, I couldn't see your face anymore. I was immature then. I cried several nights. I'd play songs by Westlife and all these old school songs, and all of a sudden I said to her, "This is it. I have to let you go. You are not here." I didn't really understand relationships then, because we were still young, so we let each other go, although we were still connected on Facebook. We didn't even break up with each other, we just let each other go, but still connected on Facebook. We were still in contact. Before 2018, we reunited again after 10 years. I've been into relationships when I was in school, met new people. Yes, I've always been a loving person. People call me Mr. Romantic because I get so vexed when people or young guys tell me, "I no fit they chop from one pot of soup," which means I cannot stay with one lady. And I think this is the reality for some guys. They can't stay with one lady. But I knew my values. I didn't want to be like my father. I didn't want to be a womanizer. So anytime I had relationships, I dated just one lady at a time. I've never been a cheat. I've never cheated before. I can say that with my full chest, as we say here in Nigeria. Fast forward, I've been into a couple of relationships. She knew about it. She had also been into a couple of relationships. But there was a relationship I was in when I was hustling and before I started driving for Uber that was toxic, and well, this lady was a serial cheat, constantly cheating on me, something I never did to anyone, even in business relationships. I just couldn't take it anymore, so one day I ended our relationship. This was a relationship I was in from my university days. As a result, I became so emotionally broken. I was heartbroken. I kept on asking myself, why do people do to you the things that you can't do to them? I came to the realization that I'm not like other people. We are not wired the same way. So to cut the long story short, eventually, about a week later, I was going through my Facebook and I saw Maria, my wife. I sent her a message. Although before now, we still used to reach out to each other, like sometimes twice in a year. I went through her pictures, saw how beautiful she is, so I chatted her up and I asked her, "How are you? How are you doing?" And that was how it all started. We started conversations. I asked her about her relationships. She told me she's not in a relationship. I told her I just came out of a relationship, so we gave it some time. We just kept on chatting, and eventually we reignited the fire with the spark of connecting again, my first love again. And yes, we went out on an amazing date. I'll never forget that. She was putting on a beautiful red gown. I saw her again after many years looking so beautiful, only that she had not grown really taller than the way I left her. Not really a tall lady, but amazing. Beautiful woman. So pretty. Even though I am blind, I remember this picture like it was yesterday. When I was calling her on the phone where we met at Ikija under the bridge, and I was saying, "Where are you? I'm looking for you." She said, "I'm here. I'm in front of EcoBank." For those of you who know Underbridge, closer to Computer Village, at EcoBank. I told her that I was at EcoBank, and I was looking around for her. I just turned towards my right, and I saw her coming in this red dress. Yes, we connected, and I was so happy to see her. She was looking so beautiful. She had this wonderful makeup on. So we went out on a date. We reunited, we connected, we took pictures, we hugged. It was such a beautiful moment. That was how our relationship started again. However, in my business, life didn't go as planned. I felt that I needed to take more time to build myself up. We were in a relationship, but I did something terrible. I was so futuristic, so bent on my career. I wanted to achieve, to start up my business. I just felt like I was wasting her time. Months after, I realized that she was so special, so unique, such an amazing woman that she needed to be with a comfortable person. She needed to be with a man who can take care of her. I wasn't wealthy enough to take care of her. I wasn't rich enough to even start plans towards marriage. I knew I wanted to marry, but I don't know. Life just happened, and I started doing something terrible. I started misbehaving. I started telling her that she can't marry me. "You can't wait for me. Go be with somebody else," I would say to her. She was shocked one day when I had that conversation, and she said, "No, Tomi, I'm not with you for the money. I love the man I see inside you." She kept on saying that. After that day, I caused her pain. She would call me, I wouldn't pick up. I'd pick up fights just to make her end the relationship. Why? Because I thought that I wasn't ready to take care of her. I think that's just me loving, but maybe in a stupid way. I told her that she should move on with her life. I may not be able to achieve all the things I would like to achieve in a matter of 5 years. I didn't want her to wait that long. You know how ladies are with their age and stuff, so I was aware of that. But she wasn't complaining. But because I thought I knew the best for her, I wanted her to move on with her life and meet somebody else. As at that time, I had already started driving for Uber. Uber wasn't really as rewarding as I thought it would be. I would strive to meet up with remittance. I would give excuses to my partner. Uber drivers are still complaining about it till today, how the funds are not really enough. I think Uber drivers are one of the most powerful and strongest people in Lagos. The money wasn't coming in the way I expected, so I just felt that I wasn't ready. So I decided to let her go forcefully. She kept on crying, she tried to call me, and I refused to pick up her calls. She kept on sending me messages that she didn't want to leave me. I remember when we went to Redeemed Camp and we prayed about our relationship, and she reminded me of those days. We prayed that God should hold our hands together because of our values. She was from a broken home, and I was from a broken home. We wanted to make it work. I forgot all those things entirely. She got tired and she stopped calling me not until the day that the robbery attack happened. My brother remembered her when I was on the hospital bed and he said to me, "Tomi, won't you call Anu?" I said, "Do you know what I've done? I've broken her heart. She won't answer me." This was about a month after she stopped calling me. I said, "Do you know what I've done to this lady? She's not going to pick up my call. I broke her heart. I did something terrible." My brother took my phone behind my back and called Anu, my wonderful wife. Surprisingly, my wife came the next day. I didn't say this earlier in the story. I was still in shock, so I didn't even cry when I lost my sight. I remember when my wife, my longtime girlfriend, came. She held my hand, and I knew it was her, but I could not see. I was in a tragedy, and I said, "Anu, why did you come after all I've done to you?" She said I should shut up. She said that I should keep quiet, that it's okay. She didn't want me to talk about it. And for the first time after I lost my sight, I cried. There were bandages on my eyes, so nobody knew that I was crying. I said, "Why did you come back after all I've done to you?" She stayed with me. She started helping my mother. She came almost every day. She's a very supportive woman, who loves me despite the fact that I did something terrible to her. She was there with me. One day I asked her, "Are you sure you can continue with me like this?" And she said, "You have started again." Those were her exact words. She said, "I'm not with you because you are blind. This is not the way I met you. I'm with you because of the man that I see inside you." We continued our relationship again. We reunited our love on a new level. I had just 40,000 naira in my account, but she brought blessings to my life. She said, "Tomi, I'm not going to leave you like this. Let's get married." I was like, "Get married? You're funny. I just lost my sight and you said let's get married." She went to tell her mother. I asked her to find out how her mother would feel about it. She asked her mother, an amazing woman. I have a wonderful relationship with her mother. Her mother asked her, "Are you sure you love this person? Are you sure you are willing to be with this person knowing full well that he's blind?" She said yes, and her mother said, "Why not? If you love him truly, why not?" So we moved ahead. The robbery attack happened September 12th. Eventually, we got married January 31st, 2020. What a wonderful experience. Amazing pictures that I have not been able to see, even until now. She loves me unconditionally. She does everything for me and doesn't want me to do things myself. But yet, I still do things myself, no matter how much she tries to help. She's an amazing woman. Baby, if you're going to read this, I want you to know that I love you so much with all of my heart. We have a wonderful son now, amazing son. His name is William. He's a handsome boy. I never planned to be a blind father, but I will do my best to be a wonderful, loving father and a loving husband, to succeed my father and do the things he wasn't able to do. She brought blessings to my life. People heard my story and about my courage. They came to my aid, raised funds for me, got me an apartment, furnished it. My rider actually decided to raise funds for me on her birthday. That same September when the robbery happened. Her birthday was that September. She raised funds and eventually people sent help to us. This is my love story. We may not have much, but we're happy and contented. Lessons. As humans, we need somebody to be there for us. As a man, as a woman, we need a loving spouse or a loving partner that will be there to help you fulfill your dreams, to help you fulfill your destiny. We all come to that point where we fall in love, but falling in love with a purpose. As a man, I had my visions and values, and I think my wife saw this about me. One lesson from this is, don't mix business with pleasure. Only let that person, your partner, be there to inspire you. But don't ever mix business with pleasure. First of all, when we reunited and life wasn't working out the way it was planned, like I always say, we're not the authors of our own destiny. Life didn't go as planned. I didn't make the money I wanted to make in the year I planned. So I felt I wasn't ready to take care of a lady who was due for marriage. I wanted the best for her, and I think that was just me loving her. I was willing to let her go, forgetting that this lady loves me unconditionally, even though I didn't have much, forgetting that she sees the vision in me. She sees the drive. She sees the positivity. She sees the hope. She sees my resilience. She sees my persistence. I almost lost her. Why? Because of my selfish reasons. My career, my plans to make money and set up my own business, not knowing that this woman eventually will become my wife and be there to support me when I lost my sight. And she's still there for me. So, don't mix business with pleasure. If you see somebody that loves you just the way you are, don't push them away, especially if that's a person that loves you unconditionally, someone who is willing to wait for you, who sees the vision and is patient enough to be there for you, to stand by you even till the very end. It is said that behind every successful man, there's a woman. Behind my story, there was a woman. Don't push the ones that love you truly. Don't push them away. This is especially to young people trying to acquire and achieve. And because of career, you say no, you can't go on with the relationship. I know some guys get to that point where they feel they can't take care of that lady because they care about her so much, and they fail to see that the lady is patient with them. If a lady tells you, "I'm willing to wait for you," I think you should listen. If the lady tells you, "I'm willing to stand by you even though you have nothing," and she says that boldly without stuttering, then that's a good woman. I found a good thing. I found a good woman. I held on to her. What I learned from our courtship to our marriage is that now I love her unconditionally. Love with all of your heart. Don't let your past relationships affect the present relationship. Don't let your past relationship change who you are. I've been through some relationships that broke my heart and changed my orientation towards relationships. Don't let it change who you are. If you're a faithful man, keep being a faithful man. If you're a faithful woman, keep being a faithful woman. Don't say because somebody cheated on you, you change. Don't let somebody's mistakes change you. Don't let somebody's immaturity make you immature. That's one lesson you should take away. Don't let your past relationships with your partner or in your previous marriage affect the present one or the one in the future. Love the way you are designed, the way your heart is. Love freely and be as human as you can be to your partner, to your wife, to your lover, to your husband, whoever it is. Another thing I've learned is to be patient when it comes to relationships. Be patient. When you see a good woman or a good man, don't say they don't have money or they haven't made it. All what you need to look at is that vision and see how you can help that man or woman achieve it. Both of you can achieve and become successful together. One thing I've learned so far from my relationship experience is to prepare towards relationships like you're preparing for war. It's a school you will never graduate from when you get married, so I built myself. I didn't want to be a womanizer over time. I read books, listened to the likes of Pastor Sam Adeyemi and his relationship speeches. I empowered myself and I built myself up. I read multiple books about relationships and did my study online. I always say this, don't just be a man, be a good man. Same goes for the woman. Don't just be a woman, but be a good woman. Prepare towards relationships. Don't be focused on just the wedding day. There's a marriage after the wedding day. Today, my wife and I are living a wonderful life, wonderful marriage. We love ourselves so much. Why? Because we prepared. She didn't want to make the mistakes of her mother. I didn't want to make the mistakes of my father. We didn't want to end up like our parents. Love and love for real. Chapter 11. Turning the tragedy into a local message for millions of people. I started to focus on the message and not the tragedy. I started to focus on the beauty and not the ashes. I started to focus on the silver lining and not the storm. I started to ask myself, what can I bring out of this? And I switched the questions to, why not me? I started the message of hope, to be that light to the world, to be that encourager, to be that channel of hope to somebody else out there. I realized that if I was vulnerable enough to share my story, somebody out there might be listening. Somebody out there might just be waiting to hear my story. But I had to start small. I started from my immediate community. How can I make an impact? I began to ask myself. How can I fall in line with God's plans? Because the prayer I prayed that day when I knelt down was, God, don't let my blindness be in vain. But I knew that faith without work is dead. I knew I had to take action. I knew I had to do something. I remember how people in the past, like Gandhi, decided to be a message. I started asking myself, what message do I have to give to the world? And that was how I started the journey of making 1 million and more people smile. I started to build and develop myself. I started to listen to speakers. At this time, I already learned how to use my phone because I knew I needed to learn and develop myself. Somebody got me an iPhone, which is actually very, very accessible for blind people. I learned how to use my phone in a matter of 1 week because I developed myself. It wasn't easy initially. I told myself that I can't use my phone, but I knew that I needed to develop myself, to start to look up and read stuff by myself, browse the internet myself. I started learning how to use WhatsApp, how to use Facebook, how to use Twitter and all social media platforms so that I can still communicate with people, so that I can still be that message of hope to people. Now, most of my posts on Facebook and Instagram are done by me. Why? Because I made a choice to learn. I knew that I needed to be that message to somebody out there. I wanted to leave a mark in the life of everyone I've come across and everyone I would meet eventually in my life. Even when I speak to my loved ones, I always say this. I want to come to a point whereby if I've touched lives, I'm no longer afraid of death, knowing full well that even if it's a soul that I've left a mark in his or her life, I'll die one of the happiest blind men in the world. So I started by reading some good books and listening to the likes of Robert Kiyosaki. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, an amazing book, The Pursuit of Happiness by Chris Gardner. I started realizing there were audiobooks on YouTube. I started accessing YouTube myself, doing all my search myself. I didn't even need my brother anymore. I started learning how to monitor my bank accounts. Some of these Nigerian bank applications are accessible for blind people. I started doing transfers myself. People around me were amazed by all of this. I realized that I was a source of hope and inspiration to people. I started asking myself, how can I start to reach out to everyone around me? How can I make this a message of hope to somebody who is almost giving up out there? Who is almost taking their own life? Who's giving up on life? Even though I may not have the same experience with other people, I knew that I could be at least a source of hope to many people only if I come out, share my story, and do some things. First of all, I did an outreach to Juvenile Home for Boys at Oregon Ikija, Lagos. It was my first outreach to spread the message of love and forgiveness to young boys in the Special Corrections Center who have perpetrated crimes. I did this because this was the only way I could reach out to the young man that shot me, by reaching out to these young boys, to let him know that I've forgiven him. I shared the message of love and reached out to over 160 young boys and empowered them. People volunteered and it was an amazing meeting. This was September 12th, 2020. I realized that I could become a message of not just hope, but of forgiveness and of love for every human being. I started to encourage people. While I was raising funds, trying to create awareness on radio, somebody heard my story. But before then, I remember a friend who I was advising and he called me up, asking me to encourage him. He was almost giving up. After I encouraged him, he said to me, "Tomi, don't you think you need to be a counselor?" And I said, "Yes, I think that's true." And I thought about it. And that was why my advocacy for mental health started, to help people on a journey, to help them come out of depression, to guide them towards living a better life, living a more fulfilled life by being a counselor. Coincidentally, when I was trying to raise funds for that project, somebody heard my story and she asked me what I was up to and I told her I planned to go into counseling. but it's quite expensive. I couldn't afford it. This lady heard my story from nowhere and she footed the bills, and I went into counseling at Institute of Counseling, Ikoyi, Lagos, Nigeria. I started my certificate course in counseling and I became a counselor. Now, I'm a counselor. Why? Because I want to guide people into living a better life. I don't like it when I hear about people committing suicide, and that's why I'm passionate about it. I've been called to speak at seminars on Zoom for years. This was during the COVID-19 pandemic, so I was getting invitations to speak at several and share my story. I kept on getting feedback like, "Tomi, I heard your story. I'm impressed. I am inspired, and because of you, I'm no longer depressed." I remember one person reached out to me and said, "Tomi, I was thinking of suicide until I heard your story. I'm no longer suicidal." Somebody out there just waiting to hear your story, how you were able to overcome. It all started to make sense. All my blindness, after all, was not in vain. Eventually, I was able to speak in my first live event at Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, Voice Against Suicide. I remember a friend of mine who organized Walk Against Suicide, which then I was still an Uber driver, but I was passionate about youths and this thing called suicide because I have gone through it before. I volunteered my time for my friend, even though I needed money then. It was a walk against suicide. I volunteered my car. I took almost the whole day to walk against suicide. She organized an event, and I was one of the special guests. This was how I became a voice of hope. I became a voice, a message of hope. I turned my tragedy to a message in my community. I'm still on a journey to reach out to as many people as possible, because this is what gives me hope. This is what makes my life worthwhile. This is what gives it meaning. Sometimes some things happen to us for a reason, but we should not be overwhelmed by negativity, but focus on the silver lining. Focus on the beauty. Focus on the message behind the tragedy. This was how I became a local message in my country, reaching out to as many people as possible. I never knew that this was the plan that God had for me after all. Challenges are there to make us stronger. We never know how powerful we are until we go through some challenges. God will never give you what you cannot handle. Life will never give you what you cannot handle. There was a message after all. I found the purpose behind my pain, and I started to become the message of hope and love and light. Lessons. First of all, the question I'll ask us is, how can you turn what you have into something valuable? How can you turn your experience of how you were able to overcome into something valuable? I realized that I was able to overcome this painful incident and turn it from a tragedy to a message of light and hope to everyone around me. I started to ask myself, how can I impact my community? What do you want to be remembered for? What mark do you want to leave in the lives of people? How can you empower people? How can you inspire people? How can you be there for your immediate community? I started to ask myself these questions. From the values I got from the books that I've read in the past, I realized that I could do something. That's why it's important that we read books. Reading books is very important. It's like filling yourself up with values. I realized I could turn my tragedy to a message, but first, I had to start locally. I remember taking little steps, even though I had the plan to reach out globally. I started with reaching out to people locally. I started by launching my foundation. I started by getting certified as a counselor and a mental health counselor. The question is, what can you do with what you have? How can you transform it into something that will make an impact in the lives of people and in your immediate community? What tragedy have you been through that you can turn to a message? What challenge have you been through that you can be vulnerable enough to share by speaking at seminars and at events to empower young people and let them know how they can turn their tragedy to a message and be that channel of hope to others? You can share your story to inspire others by letting them know how you were able to overcome your challenges, so they can tell themselves that if you could overcome, then they too can overcome. Somebody out there in your community is waiting for you to share your story. Somebody out there in your community is waiting for you to be that channel of hope to them. We have all been through challenges in life that we have overcome. If you are reading this, you have been through a challenge and you have overcome. Life would never give us what we cannot handle. So turn your challenge and your overcoming story to a message. How you were able to rise when that business fell. How you were able to overcome when you had that broken relationship. How you were able to turn your life into a source of courage. How you were able to rise up from failure. Share your story and be that hope to somebody out there. The lesson from this chapter is to share your story to give hope. Share your story to encourage others. Share your story to leave a mark. Leaving a good legacy starts from your local community and on to the next one, to a global message. Chapter 12. Turning the tragedy into a global message for millions of people. I started to think about how I could reach out to more people, how I could make 1 billion and more people to smile, how I could make my story a message of hope to everyone around the world, how I could be relevant in my lifetime, to be remembered as somebody who was courageous, who picked himself back up, who did not let his background keep his back to the ground. Against all odds, I picked myself back up and I started to ask, how can I be that message of hope to more people out there in the world? There was no medium. I may not have the right connection, but God works in mysterious ways. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, an application was invented called Clubhouse. I never knew about Clubhouse during the pandemic. This was around 2020, when Clubhouse was invented. It's an audio social media platform. Throughout 2020, I never heard of Clubhouse. This year, 2021, one of the persons that has been hearing me speak and seeing all the amazing stuff I've been doing told me sometime around April that he saw all the things I've been able to do. I launched my foundation on my birthday, April 24th, 2021, to reach out to people with visual impairment. I reached out to 10 blind children, got them tailor frames to learn mathematics, and also to about 35 to 40 families of blind people. I was able to create awareness. We got donations. I felt so happy doing that. I knew what it was to be a blind person. I remember having conversations with a blind friend of mine, and that was what inspired me to start a nonprofit foundation. I had this wonderful conversation with one of the men I met in my blind school. At a point, I asked him, "What are your greatest challenges so far since when you lost your sight?" All of a sudden, this man got teary and said, "Tomi, there's no support from the government," and he started crying. He said his family doesn't have food to eat. I remember when I didn't have food to eat, when my mother and father split, and we started from scratch. I knew what it meant to starve. I knew how it felt. This man had children. I was strong for this man, and he was crying. A man in his 60s, crying like a baby. He said he didn't know what to do. Then, I wasn't really financially buoyant, but I tried my best and sent him some money. This happened early this year, 2021, around January. After that conversation, I cried and I said, "God, what can I do about this?" And that was how the idea came to start up a nonprofit, the Tomi Waziri Foundation. I chose Tomi Waziri Foundation because you could easily Google my name and see it on all the news platforms. I had other names like Tragedy to Message Foundation, the Message of Hope Foundation. However, Tomi Waziri Foundation was chosen because you could search the news of what happened about me. I knew that when you see all the things that I'm doing, it will inspire you. It didn't become something local anymore, as some people in diaspora saw this on a news platform here in Nigeria. The event was documented. It's in my YouTube channel, in my documentary. It's all there. All my documentaries are there, from my outreach to feed 100 people. I was in Oshodi, Lagos, Nigeria then. All my projects are documented on my YouTube channel, Tomi Waziri. If you check my playlist, you'll see the documentaries. People in diaspora were seeing all of this through my YouTube channel. They saw how I was able to have 3 major projects. The first one on my birthday. Every April 24th, till the day I die, I've dedicated it to reaching out to the visually impaired people. And not just the visually impaired people alone, but also people with disabilities. I would do it till the day I die, on every birthday of mine. September 12th is the day I have dedicated to reaching out to juvenile homes and prisons to spread the message of Christ. The message of forgiveness and how people can forgive themselves, how people can live freely with love. Thirdly, every week before December 25th, I have dedicated to reaching out to 1,000 people. My first project was to 100 people, but my next one is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger by God's grace. The idea is to get them rice and chicken, Nigerian jollof rice, to reach out to people and give them rice and chicken and to promote love in our community. For the awareness for every human being to see their neighbors as humans first, before seeing that person as Igbo, Yoruba, or Hausa. To love a human being close to you first, before seeing that person as a Muslim or Christian or a white person or a black person or a colored person or a brown person. To see every other person as a human being first. The awareness of love, 3 major projects and people in diaspora started to see this and started to ask and were encouraged and inspired. They funded some of the projects, but I started to ask myself, how can I reach out to the world? My dream is to be called to other places, other countries, to share my story, to inspire. I developed myself to be an inspirational speaker. I just want to touch lives till the day I die. Then Clubhouse came along. I was able to download the application. I joined Clubhouse, listening first, and I think there's power in listening. When you listen to amazing stories, when you listen to people speak. I started to learn to be a speaker, to sharpen my skills, learning from people around the world. I learned in the space of a month, empowered myself, developed myself. I was going into rooms where you hear speakers speak. I was listening on YouTube how to become an inspirational speaker, how to become a motivational speaker. I started to develop myself and I started to speak. I became vulnerable. People from different walks of life around the world started to hear my story, and I felt so fulfilled. People in diaspora, Nigerians in diaspora, Americans, Indians, Asians, people from all walks of life started to get inspired by my story. They reached out to me in my DM, the same message I always got. Tomi, I heard your story. I'm no longer depressed. Tomi, you are inspiring. Tomi, you are a message of hope. Tomi, because of you, I'm no longer suicidal. Please keep sharing your story. I started getting this feedback. People would reach out to me in my back channel, in my DM. Suddenly, I remembered to pray. I prayed again and said, God, don't let my blindness be in vain. I'm living a fulfilled life to my own fulfillment and will continue this way. I believe one thing. I learned something, which I will be sharing in the next chapter about the lessons I've learned. Wait for it. I became a global message of hope. I never knew that this was the plan, and I'm so happy that I've touched lives. I'm so happy that my blindness is not in vain after all. I'm still on a journey of making 1 billion and more people smile, to reach out to the world. I see myself speaking to millions of people, to be relevant in my own time, to leave a mark, to leave a message of love, hope, kindness, and light to the whole world. Turning my tragedy to a message, a global message. I'm still on that journey. I've not started yet. Lessons. I started to switch my question to, how can I reach out to millions and billions of people, not just in Nigeria, but in the whole world? How can I make this a message of hope to the whole world? This was at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. How can I share my story to the whole world? How can I make it a channel of light to someone else in one other corner of the country? How can I make it a message of hope to someone out there in another country, somewhere in one corner of the world? Somebody out there is waiting to hear your story, your overcomer's story, to encourage them, not just in your local community. Start to think outside of the box. Value is the new currency. How can you add value to people's lives? Apart from business, career, and what have you, the value of courage and hope. A human being has to be mentally stable before achieving in a career what they want to achieve. It starts from the mind first before any other thing. So how can you help people build a positive mindset? I started to develop myself, learning to speak at events. I became an inspirational speaker. I've been privileged to speak locally at Voice Against Suicide in Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, an event that I was one of the special guests alongside a few celebrities. But it wasn't enough. The goal was not fame, and the goal is still not fame. The goal is to be relevant in my own time before I leave this earth. The question again, what will you be remembered for? Globally, what will you be remembered for? There are a lot of applications you can leverage on. There's YouTube, channel it to share your story. There's Instagram, challenge it to be that message of hope or your overcomer story. There's Facebook, leverage on it. And now, Clubhouse came. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, I stumbled on Clubhouse, and the rest is history. I became a messenger of hope to millions and millions of people. I'm still on that journey. I'm trusting God to help me reach out to more people out there, to be relevant in my own time, to leave a message of love, the message of forgiveness, to heal our world, to leave that message of hope in the lives of people. The question is, what will you be remembered for globally when you die, even locally? I keep asking myself that question. What's your purpose? My pain brought out this purpose. I'm on a journey of making 1 million and more smiles around the world. What is your purpose? Ask yourself, what can you do with your hands? What is that plan you are dragging? What is that idea that you can use to add value to people's lives? Don't leave it to yourself. Make it add value to people's lives. People invent things. They start with how they can add value to people's lives. The likes of Google, Facebook, Twitter, they added value. They solve problems, communication, advertising, social media marketing, and the list goes on. For me, I realized that my purpose was to be a channel of hope and love and light, and a messenger of love, forgiveness, an ambassador of love and kindness. But the question is, what will you be remembered for on a global level? What can you do with your hands? What tragedy can you turn to a message to millions and billions of people? It starts with a step. Develop yourself. What books are you reading to help you fulfill that purpose? What are you listening to? What you listen to is key. It's what you feed your mind with to help you fulfill purpose. Are you grinding? What's driving you? The bottom line is, what impact are you going to make in this life? Be a channel of value. Be a channel of hope. Be a channel of what you preach. Be a channel of what you offer. Leverage on applications. Or why not create yours? I met a friend who created an application. Why? Because he wants to add value and solve a problem. What problem can you solve? My purpose has given me the drive to solve the problems of discouragement, depression, anxiety. Everyone who wants to start a career or something starts from the mind. I realized that I could be there to solve problems for people. I became a counselor. I became an inspirational speaker, and I developed myself. As an introvert, I don't speak, but I found myself in a position where I had to develop myself. You have to develop yourself to sharpen your skills in whatever you're doing, in your speaking and how you create, to put you on the global stage. This is my lesson from turning my tragedy into a global message. I'm still on that journey. I'm just beginning. Chapter 13. Bright Lessons from My Dark World. When I look back at my life, I look at how far I've come, where I have been, and where I am now. I've learned a lot of lessons, but I'm going to give you the lessons I've learned in my life that are very important. I've learned to take life a step at a time, to be patient, to follow the flow. I was so quick about making money. Something told me not to take that trip. I was so focused on money. I've learned now that when you try to run faster than your shadow, you are looking for trouble. Take life a step at a time. I kept on looking at other people around me, driving their own cars. Yes, I was doing something legitimate, but I was comparing myself with other people. I want to say that I've learned that you don't have the same timeline with other people. You don't have the same destiny with other people. So why not take life a step at a time? To be patient, to take life slowly, to wait for your own time, to be contented with what you have, while being grateful for the things that you have. I've learned to be grateful for all the things that I have. I've learned to be grateful for the fact that I'm alive. I've learned to be grateful for the things that I take for granted. I knew the value of sight when I lost my sight. Be grateful for what you have. You don't know the value of what you have until you lose it. I've learnt to take life slowly. I've learnt to live my own life and not somebody else's. Concerning my comeback and turning the story of my tragedy to message, I've learned that we are not the authors of our own destiny. We cannot control what happens to us. We can't control what life throws at us. I've learned that we can't control the challenges most times. We can't control the death of a loved one. We can't control our failures. I've learned that even when we fail and fall, there's always a lesson to be learnt. Thomas Edison, the man who invented the bulb, found 999 ways that the bulb will not work. I've learnt not to stay a failure, to rise up. I've learnt to find ways to make my life work, to rise up from my pain. I've learnt to see challenges as my ally. I've learnt to focus on positivity instead of negativity. I've learnt to love, to see human beings differently, to forgive quickly. I've learnt a lot in my life, but the most important lesson that I've learnt is not to see the struggle or failure as negative, but to see it as a stepping stone to a stronger you. To pick up the lemons that life throws at me and turn them to lemonades. I've realized that I don't have the pencils to write my own life, so I've learnt to live every day a step at a time, not worrying about tomorrow. Studies have shown that we have no control over 92% of the things that we worry about. Studies have shown that most of the things that we worry about, things we are afraid of, wouldn't even come to pass. I can't really remember now, but I think 95% of the things we worry about may not even come to pass. I've learnt to be grateful, to live a life of gratitude, not focusing on the things that I want, that I'm aspiring for, but to remember the things that I have, and to remember how far I've come, how far I've grown, to look back and remind myself that I'm not where I used to be. As long as there's a growth, there's no matter how slow, you are on the right track. As long as you are not where you used to be last month, as long as I'm not where I used to be last year, I'm on the right track. I've learned to have the right mindset, to train my mind, to realize that I have the power and the ability to make a choice, to choose the best for myself. As a counselor, we are trained, and we are told that you can't choose for somebody. You can't make choices for your client, but you can guide that client towards making a decision for themselves, the right way with the right strategies, with the right theory, be it psychotherapy, psychodynamic, behavioral therapy, realistic, cognitive, the list goes on. The bottom line of this is that it's up to me to choose what I want for myself. It's up to me to choose. I've learned that it's up to me to choose what I want for myself. It's up to you to choose what you want for yourself, to choose how you respond to that pain, to choose how you respond to that loss, to choose how you respond to that challenge, and to choose how to respond to that failure. The choice is yours to make, and I've learnt that I have the power to choose what I want for myself. These are my lessons to you from my messed up world. Inspirational quotes by Tomi Waziri. When we all channel our thoughts towards living life for others, the whole world becomes a better place. It's okay to fail at some points in our life. It only makes your story more interesting when you win. Don't give up. The moment you start to let go of the negativity and darkness of your past, your future will be filled with brightness and positivity. Just let it go. Your story would be told and heard 10 years from now only if you don't quit. Men may fail you, but when you trust totally in God, he will send men to fill you. The universe works in favor of what you say with your mouth. Prophesy good things to yourself every day. Yes, I know life is beautiful, only that I have to see life through my ears. When people ask how I operate my device as a visually impaired person, I just smile. The truth is, if I didn't choose happiness, I wouldn't have picked up my device, not to talk of even learning how to use it. Choosing happiness keeps you going, even in dark times. I might be a blind father, but I will do all it takes not to be a bad father. You may see me smile often, but deep down inside, that is just me having victory over my dark times. When everyone thinks of love before taking any action, the reaction to that action becomes a chain reaction of love. The beauty of the world is not complete when there is no love in it. Personal development is key. Focus on growth and your values. Money is just paper and numbers, but value is the real currency. That you lost your sight doesn't mean you lost insight. That you lost something doesn't mean you lost everything. As long as you can breathe, there will always be a way. The true essence of humanity is to show true humanity through kindness to humanity. Your complaint is somebody else's prayer point. Be addicted to the attitude of gratitude. Be kind always. Love those who hate you, and always repay with love. Be the light the world needs, and let your love shine. When people throw stones at you, throw roses back. Revenge with love. In the journey of life, don't let your race be against anybody, but let it be a race with everybody. It's not a competition for who is the best, but a determination for who brings out the best in others.